West Denver. Sleep deprived and heavily caffeinated.
All right, let's do this then.
This is the Jeff and Bill Show.
I don't agree with that.
They don't always agree, but hey, at least they have coffee.
Coffee.
And each other.
I love you, man.
God help us.
I want to bless him. We need all the help we can get.
Now here's Jeff Hunt and Bill Thorpe. The Jeff and Bill Show on News Talk 710 KNUS.
It is 6 a.m. in the Mile High City on this Monday, April 7th, 2025. Good morning, Denver, Colorado. You've tuned in to the Jeff and Bill Show. News Talk 710 KNUS. I'm your co-host, Jeff Hunt, along with Bill Thorpe, bringing you the freshest insights and hottest takes from the right, left, and center. Boy, do we've got a great show for you today. Lots to talk about. The protests that took place downtown. Brandy Bradley's going to join us on to give us a legislative update because they had to work yesterday. They passed some crazy bills, even grabbing the attention of some national media outlets. We'll get to that in just a little bit. 7 o'clock hour, Dr. Alex McFarland, a youth, religion, culture expert, going to break down the disaster that is Disney's Live remake. Not getting anywhere close to the amount of money it needed to make to even break even. Why is that? We'll get to that in the 7 o'clock hour. Laura Thomas, former Douglas County Commissioner, is going to join us in the 8 o'clock hour to respond to George Teal, who we had on the show Friday, about Douglas County becoming a home rule county. 8 o'clock hour, we'll get to that. And then, of course, Trump, trade, and tariffs. All that to talk about today. Morning, Bill. Good weekend?
Hey, morning. Busy. Not too bad. How about yours?
We went to Shenyang.
Oh, really?
At the
You
BULA
did?
Theater.
Yes, at the BUL Theater. Yes. How was that? Yes.
It's unique. It's worth seeing. It's fun. Absolutely worth seeing. But it's a religious anti-communism
Yes.
show.
Yes, exactly.
So it's put on by the Falun Gong.
Yes, it is.
And the Falun Gong are the people who are behind Epoch Times.
Yes.
And it's a meditation style religion.
Yep.
With some like Buddhist crossover. And they have a religious leader and all that. And so you get exposed to that type of promotion, the religious promotion that takes place. And so they want you to convert to,
Yes, they do.
To the Falun Gong.
Yes.
But it's very anti-communism. I mean, there's
there's
literally
a lot
like
of that.
moments where they depict the communists as throwing little old ladies in front of cars and stuff like that. So very anti-communism, which I appreciated.
Very much so.
But the Falun Gong kind of remind me of Mormon missionaries a little bit. They dress in their khaki pants and all that stuff. So imagine Chinese kung fu, ballet, Mormonism.
Yeah.
And you get the Falun Gong.
Yeah. But you know what? I mean, the visually, it's spectacular. I mean, just what they do on stage and stuff is really cool to see. So,
it is. Have you seen it before? You've been to...
Yeah, years ago. I mean, it's got to be like 7, 10 years, somewhere in there, etc. Yeah, but they don't cover the whole religious part of that in the promos, oddly enough.
No.
That's not on the promo side of it. No, not at all. But again, the visually, though, it's stunning. Yeah, what they do is really, really cool.
And I think people should be able to go to other folks' religious activities and just enjoy it. You know, you don't have to buy into.
No.
I'm not Catholic. I go to mass with my friends sometimes. I don't partake in communion though. So you could attend other religious activities and just enjoy the show.
Yeah, and I just the. And you know, it's different than any other sort of a religious ceremony because of the presentation they have on stage. I mean, this is done as something that is
it is
supposed to be
level.
entertainment. Yeah, so it's kind of fun. And that's the thing is just visually, it's fun to see.
Everybody was kung fu. No kung fu fighting in mass.
No, not at all. No, and they're actually and oddly enough, what they're doing in Falun Gong is it's a part of kung fu. It's wushu, which is the performance aspect of kung fu. Is really what they're doing. In fact, if you see any fights that are martial arts inside of movies, with rare exceptions, that's all wushu. It's all the performative aspect of kung fu. Yeah, there are. Yeah, I've got a couple of kids that did wushu for a while. That did that performance deal. So yeah, it is. But when you watch it, yeah, it's like, oh, now I know where all the fights in the movies come from.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, it's all that. Yeah.
Well, the orchestra was great too.
Yep.
It's a wonderful show. We all enjoyed it. So
Nice.
thank you to Shun Yun and visiting Denver,
that's
Colorado.
fantastic.
Great thing to go see. Go see it once in your life. It's worth seeing
Yeah,
for sure.
it is just once, just because of the presentation nature, not the religious side of it, but just to see what they do on stage. It's really cool to see. It's almost like. It's not really, the over-the-top stuff like Cirque du Soleil, but it's definitely far beyond most stage performances that we see. So, yeah, it's really cool.
Anyone who's against communism is a friend of mine.
Yeah,
so
it's kind of neat.
That is that's a good storyline throughout that. All right, we've got a lot to cover today. Brandy Bradley coming up here in just a minute, but now it's time for Blake Olson.
Blake Olson.
Blake Olson, news and comment.
Good morning. Happy Monday, 32 and clear in Denver. Expecting a high of 66 today. The 710 5-day forecast is coming up. Our top story, 2 people are dead following a shooting outside Foothills Mall in Fort Collins. The police say that the 2 victims were on a sidewalk outside the mall when the shooting happened around 5 o'clock on Saturday. An unidentified teen was taken into custody Sunday as a part of the investigation. Police believe that the shooting may be gang-related. Just northeast of Greeley, residents were evacuated, and a small elementary school canceled classes this morning after an incident at an oil and gas facility south of Weld County Road 74. It was called a containment issue. Residents evacuated as a precaution.
With China, it's $1 trillion, and we have to solve our trade deficit with China. We have $1 trillion trade deficit with China.
DJT on Truth Social saying that, hey, we have massive deficits with China and the EU and many others. The only way this problem can be cured is with tariffs, which are now bringing tens of billions of dollars into the U.S.
Hundreds of billions of dollars a year we lose with China, and unless we solve that problem, I'm not going to make a deal. Now, I'm willing to deal with China, but they have to solve their surplus. We have a tremendous deficit problem with China. They have a surplus of at least $1 trillion a year. I think it's like $1.1 trillion, and I want that solved. And no other president's taken it on. I had to take it on the last time, and then we had a rigged election. No other president's taken it on. And so China is, they say the market's spoken. China is right now taking a big hit because everyone knows we're right.
DJT says they're already in effect and a beautiful thing to behold.
Now, Blake, over the weekend I was watching basketball, the NCAA, which I think you're going to talk about in a second here. Mm-hmm. But Ford running ads right now bragging that they employ the most amount of American workers via hourly here, and they do the most amount of assembly out of any car dealership in America. I want to see all the car dealerships or car dealers running at that. Who can build the most? Who can employ the most?
Yes,
it was awesome. All here in America.
That's great. Yeah, you should be bragging about it, and there should be huge competition for who employs the most people and creates the most jobs. I'm right there with you. No, that is healthy, absolutely. And as far as the markets go, Marco Rubio puts it best.
No, their economies are not crashing. Their markets are reacting to a dramatic change in the global order in terms of trade. And so what happens is pretty straightforward. If you're a company and you make a bunch of your products in China, and all of a sudden shareholders or people that play the stock market realize that it's going to cost a lot more to produce in China, your stock is going to go down. But ultimately, the markets, as long as they know what the rules are going to be moving forward, and as long as that's set and you can sustain where you're going to be, the markets will adjust. Businesses around the world, including in trade and global trade, they just need to know what the rules are. Once they know what the rules are, they will adjust to those rules.
Yep, pump the brakes. Over 1 million people took part in anti-Trump protests Saturday. Rallies were held in all 50 states, as well as around the world, in response to the Trump administration's actions, i.e., people lost jobs, government jobs, paid by taxpayers, that evidently you're not ever supposed to lose. People feel good bitching and moaning together. The age of entitlement. The patriotic rallies, by the way, were those occurred Election Day 2024. Remember that? A federal judge is not backing down from her order to have a Maryland man, return from El Salvador. U.S. District Court Judge Paula Zenas has denied a Justice Department request for a stay on her order to have Kilmar Abrego Garcia return to the U.S. Yesterday's 22-page ruling called the detention and deportation of Abrego Garcia wholly lawless. She's doing the good work of George Soros.
Wait, the guy that came here illegally was deported lawlessly? That's the lawless part of this?
Yeah, it's kind of a contradiction, I think.
I love how they just ignore one whole aspect of it.
That's so freaking evil, man.
We deported him lawlessly. Okay, was he here lawfully?
Right.
Well, no.
Thank you. No. Exactly. Now, see, I'm getting confused. Is this the father that they deported? The dad? I'm losing track. I think like last week it was Maryland father or Virginia dad ripped away from his family. And oh, man. But, hey, they're standing strong. This administration, but this judge, she wants to make sure that he comes back. All right, AG Pam Bondi says people have threatened her since she said the Justice Department is seeking the death penalty against Luigi Mangione. Mangione murdered the CEO of United Healthcare on the Manhattan Street, you'll remember that, and pleaded not guilty to state murder and terrorism charges. News brought to you by Lair Fireplace and Patio, Denver's premier source for everything fireplace, patio, and grills, locally owned and operated since 1954, online at lairfireplacepatio.com.
But no, look, he's just trying to find a seam and know that, hey, I'm going to try to force it to him if he's open.
Here is Ovechkin, shoots, he scores! He scores! Number 895!
Alex Ovechkin breaks the Great Ones record for number of goals in his career, NHL. Gretzky was on hand he's the Great One, by the way, just in case there are young people listening. Gretzky was on hand with FBI Director Kash Patel. And so that was a big scene, huge day yesterday for Ovechkin. Congratulations to him. The Avalanche play host to the Golden Knights tomorrow. Rockies finally win game number 2, 12-5 over the A's. Nuggets fall to the Pacers 125-120. National championship is tonight, Houston and Florida.
Bro.
Is your bracket busted?
Well, yeah, you and me both. We were both Duke guys. But it was like 2 minutes left, and they're up by 12 or something. I'm like, I'm going to, because that's when everything slows down, and I was like, I'm going to just go watch a movie. And so I switch over. I'm so happy. My team's going to the national championship. And then my boys later that night were like, what was the final score? And I just look down, and I go to the final score. I'm like, Houston? Wait, what? What?
Yeah.
That was crazy. I had to go back and watch the highlights.
Man. Yep, way too much time.
Well, and a foul against Flag there.
Absolutely.
That was not a foul.
I had a feeling you'd say that. Yeah, I was kind of disappointed as well. It was a lot of people's brackets were totally trashed after that one. So we got Houston and Florida tonight. The Gators will try to. I think it'd be an upset if they defeat Houston. We'll see what happens. UConn wins their 12th women's championship over the weekend. 29 in Littleton, 30 in Aurora, 32 in Denver. Jeff and Billy continue. Blake Olson, News Talk 710 KNUS.
Back to mild spring weather for Denver in the Front Range this week. Not much going to be happening. We'll be mid-60s today, a mix of high clouds and sun, near 40 tonight, all the way to the lower 70s, cloudy and breezy Tuesday. Upper 60s, breezy Wednesday, 60s Thursday, back to the 70s for Friday and into the weekend. Weather sponsored by Colorado's Best Roofing, reminding you to protect your home from the harsh Colorado weather and schedule your free no-obligation roof inspection today at roofingcolorado.com. That's roofingcolorado.com. Meteorologist Don Day in the 710 KNUS Weather Center. Back to mild spring weather for Denver in the Front Range.
Well, if you were a lawmaker, you were ordered to report yesterday to the Colorado State Capitol because there was some important business to be had. That business including you misgender your own child, straight to jail. You misgender somebody that comes into your business, straight to jail. And to give us some insight on how that debate went down is Representative Brandy Bradley. Representative, thanks so much for taking time to join the Jeff and Bill Show.
Good morning, guys.
So, fun use of your Sunday.
I mean, it was amazing.
I mean, they pull you guys in, and you guys, give us a rundown on what happened yesterday.
So they pulled us in for third and final readings on 4, I would say, egregious bills, and they let us talk on 2 of them, and then saw that we were going to put up a little bit of a fight, and Rule 16'd us on the final 2, which means that there's no debate whatsoever.
So all those people that you represent and that are not radically progressive that live across the state, their voice was silenced. So what were the bills they passed yesterday?
So the first bill was taxpayer-funded abortion. We didn't argue abortion. We get that abortion, 62% of people have voted for that to be enshrined in our Constitution. What they didn't vote for was a continuous appropriation that we tried to remove from the bill. Amendment 79 didn't say anything about a continuous appropriation. We tried to have statistical evidence about abortion first, second, third trimester. They don't want any of that on the public records. They don't want to know how many are done. They don't want to know how much the state is spending on them. We have federal funds, and if those federal funds are used for anything other than the Hyde Amendment, we're going to be in big trouble as a state. And so there was a lot of transparency that we tried to put into this, what we think is a very bad bill, and they didn't accept any of those amendments. So that was the first one that we argued. The second one was...
And do we know how much that's going to cost taxpayers? Was there a fiscal note attached with that bill?
Yeah, they said it was going to save taxpayers to avert births. They said that it was actually going to help taxpayers to avert births. So we estimate it's going to run about $2 million every year. We know that there's private funding from Cobalt Blue, Elephant Circle, big NGOs like that fund abortion in our state, and now we're going to switch it to the taxpayers.
Avert births. That's a phrase. And that made some national news because the Speaker of the House was pointing out it's cheaper on the state to just kill the child while it's in the womb than it is to spend Medicaid dollars raising it.
Well, and we know that that's not true, Jeff, because they only appropriated $800 for abortion in the first trimester, $1,300 for other abortions, but we know that it can cost upwards of $30,000 for second and third trimester abortions, along with some of these women go into respiratory distress. And I'll have to tell you, none of these abortion clinics are regulated by the state. We tried to pass a bill That would be like going to get a total knee replacement or a colonoscopy in a non-regulated medical facility. These facilities have consequences to these women, and they won't regulate them because they don't want any statistical evidence of what's going on in our states.
And we've literally put into law now, we're going to make financial decisions based on your life and what it costs the state. So as Bill pointed out last time we were debating this, and Bill and I are in agreement on this, well, let's just jump to the other end of the spectrum and start offing people when they get to a certain age because, God forbid, they cost the state too much money.
Well, I mean, we have medical-assisted suicide. So if you have chronic headaches, you can tell your doctor and they will assist you in suicide. I mean, that passed last year. So we are doing that.
Unbelievable. Wow. So that was bill number 1. Wow. All right. Next.
Bill number 2 is for the transgender community, that you can have all these different elective procedures and the taxpayers will pay for that as well. That was 1309.
I mean, look, I think we've all said if you're a consenting adult at a certain age and you want to go off and do whatever you want to your own body, the state probably shouldn't be involved with it. But then forcing other people to pay for it?
Well, we know we're going to lose federal funding. We're going to lose federal funding, and what that's going to cost is upwards of, based on one Colorado statistics, for 1 in every 5 transgender people that go through elective surgery, it's going to cost about $10,000 is what they said. That could cost upwards of $50 million. And so we're just arguing that in a state that doesn't have Medicaid funding for IDD waivers, in a state that has cut K through 12 education funding about $300 million, why are we doing this?
Well, and are we going to end up with people traveling to Colorado to get this? Do you have to be a resident of Colorado in order to receive or in order to qualify to get transgender surgery paid for by taxpayers?
There was nothing in the bill. They said that they would make sure you're a Colorado resident, but for the abortion, no. We said we were going to become the sanctuary state for the world for abortion. They're not checking to make sure you're a resident, and there was nothing in the bill that clarified that either.
Wow. So taxpayer-funded abortions for anybody that visits the state, taxpayer-funded transgender surgeries for anybody that visits the state. What's next?
Well, the parental rights, and that's the one we were ready to fight on. And Tatone had gone off on a tangent with the Bill 1309, the second bill, calling all of us white nationalists and Nazis, basically compared the Republican Party to those people. And then Representative Ron Weinberg, obviously, whose family lost some in the Holocaust, it got very extreme. Got called into a recess, and then they came back, and basically that was the Rule 16. So the parental rights one is, yes, you're not necessarily going to go to jail, but your children are going to be removed if you dead name or misgender them. And we have this happening all over the state right now.
Yeah, the fact that in law now, in custody battles, and if you misgender your child or dead name them, or your child comes to you and is a boy and says, "Daddy, I think I'm a girl," and you go, "No, you're not, you're a boy," that is now considered a form of child abuse, and you can lose custody of your child in the state of Colorado. And then on top of that, for any business that's out there, if you misgender somebody, you can be brought before the Colorado Civil Rights Commission. This is the same commission that Jack Phillips and Lori Smith was brought for. So we know that progressives and radical leftists will use this in order to try to punish people that they think they could send a message to everybody else with. So they've used this avenue to punish conservative Christians before. I mean, Jack Phillips, in a decade-long battle that went to the U.S. Supreme Court not once but twice, and now they're going to open up that same avenue to any business that might misgender somebody.
Well, and we believe that CAUTA doesn't, religious freedom doesn't exempt gender identity, and neither does gender identity exempt religious freedom. And so coercive control to us, which is what it states throughout the bill, why would that be not flip the script on the other parent that's trying to push your kid down this lifelong pathway that we know is not good? I mean, 19-time increase of suicide if you go through surgery. We know that these kids are 98% more likely to go from puberty blockers to cross-sex hormones. We have the statistics. We've seen, I've dug into the statistics. When you're an adult, make your decisions, but children and parents can't make decisions based on the false narratives that the medical community's given them. 6 systematic reviews based in Canada and other countries say that puberty blockers are not good for minors. They're non-FDA approved. We don't know the lifelong consequences. And so why are we pushing children down this pathway? And why are we not giving parents all the information they need to make these informed decisions?
And then Brandy, we're talking with Brandy Bradley, just wrapping up a long weekend down at the Colorado State Capitol. And then the 4th bill you guys had to deal with yesterday.
No, they ruled 16 us on that one, but that was basically you can get the abortion pill through telehealth. You can be from a different state. If you're from a different state and get the abortion pill, you cannot sue the state of Colorado, and the doctors don't have to put their name on the prescription bottle. So you have a 12-year-old that gets the abortion pill via telehealth and goes septic or something goes wrong. You go to wake her up the next morning and she's not alive anymore, and you have no clue what she's taken, what she's been given, who's given it to her.
Talking with Representative Brandy Bradley, it sounds like the day was all about pushing a radical leftist social agenda. Like that was it. I mean, addressing financial issues, tax and spending issues, not really on the table, but whatever the ACLU, Planned Parenthood, and the radical social progressives wanted to make Colorado, that's what you spent your Sunday dealing with.
Yeah, I mean, these are multi-billion-dollar industries that profit off the heads of, terminating pregnancies and transgendering these kids. We know that it will cost about $1 million for these kids to go down this path into adulthood. And it's shameful. It's shameful that they don't give parents the actual information to make these decisions. And parents are forced into this. Your kid's going to commit suicide unless you take them down this path. And that is simply not true. And I feel sorry for the parents not getting this informed consent, because I think parents want to do what's best. Most parents want to do what's best for their children, and they can't if the medical community's not giving them the information that they need.
Well, I don't know if you grew up in Colorado. I did. I was born here. And this isn't the state at all anywhere close to what it was in the 80s and 90s. It's dramatically changed. And as a result of these policy changes, progressives and people that share these ideologies are moving here from surrounding states and making this state more and more progressive. I think at this point, Colorado has to be near the top, if not the most progressive state in the nation. Your thoughts?
Well, I think I've said it many times. We've told California to hold our beer. Like, let's show you what we can do. Absolutely. But parents are fighting back. This is the line in the sand. I mean, this is literally the line in the sand for the people of Colorado. I don't think that it gets any better when you move to red states. I've seen what happens in those states as well, and I think that the people are ready to fight. And, Yara Zokai called parental groups like CPAN and Aaron Lee and Protect Kids Colorado hate groups. She compared us to the KKK. And what that does is it just forms this intense bond between radical feminists and conservatives to protect our children. And they don't understand that. The Democrats have a 21% approval rating. They're not listening to the room. They're not reading the room. People don't want this happening to children. They don't want boys playing in girls' sports, and they're not reading the room.
Do you think that they're getting to a point where they're being arrogant, these leftist lawmakers, that they can pretty much do whatever they want and they're not going to pay a consequence for it? I mean, I think I looked up Javier Marbury's financial reports last session or something, and he raised like $200 and got elected. I mean, they're in such progressive areas right now that just having a D by your name gets you elected. So is there a sense that they're taking this for granted? Eventually this is going to turn against them because they're not actually addressing anyone's real problems. They want to fulfill what these leftist social engineering organizations want them to do. I guarantee you those 4 bills you talked about were not written by lawmakers. They were written by special interest groups like the ACLU and Planned Parenthood.
Oh, 100% they were. When they come to testify, you have so many activist groups and advocacy groups that are taking over. Just look at Lorena Garcia's, tracer. She makes 6 figures for Elephant Circle. She pays her mom. She pays her dad. They both made over $60,000, and we're looking into it. I think the people of Colorado are tired of being run by activists, and they just want basic solutions to, groceries being so high, their property taxes being so high. They want us working, crime being outrageous. They want solutions to that. They're tired of the progressivism.
We're talking with Representative Brandy Bradley. All right, so fun weekend. You should get to spend your Sunday. I'm sure they cut into your time being able to go to church, too, in order to do this.
Yeah, for sure.
What does this next week look like? What are you guys facing down at the state capitol?
You know, all these bills go on to the Senate, so we're just trying to get the community out there. You know, the problem with this bill, Jeff, or these bills, is that they stakeholdered these bills for over a year. They dropped them late Friday night, brought them to the committees on Monday, Tuesday, and then the people of Colorado had no clue what was going on. That is not the constitutional republic that I represent. And so what we're going to do is we're going to get the community to get out and testify in front of the Senate about these bills.
I appreciate that. That's a way that people can get out there and still have their voices heard. This just passed the House. It's still going to head to the Senate. Now, the Senate makeup is just as progressive because they all used to be in the House, and now they've come over and they're state senators. And so it's not necessarily any better over there, but you can raise a lot of awareness around this. And look, Ted Cruz tweeting about this morning. Libs of TikTok tweeting about it. I've gotten text messages coming in from people going, is Colorado really this crazy? Yes, it is. This is the type of bill. I mean, the child abuse for misgendering your child is just crazy. And goes to show they're willing to step right into your relationship with your own family and try to push their agenda and use the force of law to punish you if you're not willing to jump on with their leftist progressive agenda. So this is stuff that you can go down, testify about, message your senator, message Jared Polis. I mean, Jared Polis would sign this in a second, but eventually this will turn around when enough people in the state of Colorado know about it. So Representative Brandy Bradley, text message coming in from Jason in Denver. If this misgendering law were around in the 1980s, my high school football coach might have been jailed for life. Every practice, he referred to us as ladies when we were not working hard enough.
I mean, yeah, that's essentially what is going to happen. For businesses that we regulate, 6 most regulated state, we're just going to continue to add on until I think every business closed in Colorado.
And like I said at the very beginning, we have seen the left purposely go out of their way to find people who are conservative Christians and drag them before the Colorado Civil Rights Commission with the hopes that they'll send a message to everybody else. So pastors, business owners, get ready. This is coming unless you stop it now. Representative Brandy Bradley, thanks so much for your time today.
Hey, thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
All right. Want to talk to you about my friend Dan Caplis with Dan Caplis Law. Dan suggests you should choose a lawyer who shares your values because who you choose to represent you in an injury case says a lot about you to everyone involved in the case. Dan Caplis, the son of a police officer and a former seminarian who's dedicated the last 40 years of his life to helping people who are hurt in serious motor vehicle crashes. But Dan is believed to be the only lawyer in Colorado history to win 5 straight multi-million-dollar verdicts in Colorado crash cases. He's a real winner. It gets even bigger. Dan is believed to have won the largest truck crash verdict in Colorado history. Dan Caplis Law is so trusted that he's the official law firm partner of the Denver Nuggets and the Colorado Avalanche. Dan Caplis Law is a serious firm for serious cases. Dan accepts righteous injury cases on a percentage fee basis so that he can represent good people from all walks of life without regard to ability to pay. So if you need Dan's help, give him a call. Here's the phone number, 303-770-5551, 303-770-5551, or hit dancaplisLaw.com. That's Dan, C-A-P-L-I-S Law.com. All right, what do you think of these laws? Did Brandy Bradley and I get it wrong? Let's start with maybe the misgendering one. Is that one that's important for the state to step in to protect transgender rights? That's the title of the bill. What do you think? Give us a call, 303-696-1971, or you can text us on the Dan Caplis Law text line, 720-819-5115. Or is this just simple progressive social issues being forced upon everybody else? They have so much control, they can do this. And conservatives need to buckle up because it's going to be a bumpy ride, and we're going to see more Jack Phillips and Lori Smiths. Would love to hear from you. Phone lines open. You're listening to The Jeff and Bill Show.
This is Denver's talk leader, News Talk 710 KNUS.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. It's Monday morning, and the House of Representatives here in Colorado passed laws making your taxpayer dollars go to abortions, transgender surgeries, and if you misgender your own child, you could be brought up on child abuse charges, lose custody of your child, and if you misgender somebody in your business, Colorado civil rights, straight to the Colorado Civil Rights Commission. That's what they did yesterday at the Colorado State Capitol. Feel better this Monday morning? Let's go to the phone lines. By the way, text messages are not happy about all this stuff. These radical Dems, communists in Colorado passing these bills are an effort to destroy the family. This is a major principle of Marxism. Not wrong. If you ever read the Communist Manifesto, family is a direct target of the Marxists. Let's go to the phone lines. Joan Lakewood. Good morning, Joan. You're on the Jeff and Bill Show.
Good morning.
Good morning. First, I'd like to say thanks for coming to Lakewood with the IHOP thing. I felt like for a while you all were over on the east side of the town. I'm glad you all are coming.
We're going west side.
I know. I'm excited.
Or west side gang. Fingers. Good.
And then I just don't know where the liability is on this. If they come in and they take my kid and they gender my kid and my kid, something, God forbid, happens to my child, what is the liability of the state for doing that?
Well, I imagine nothing at this point. It's going to take time for this to turn around and change in the state, but they'll put in liability protections. They just did that on the abortion pill. So what they're going to do is they're going to route abortion pills through Colorado to other states. So if you're in Nebraska or Kansas and those states say, we don't want the abortion pill because you don't even see the doctor, you take it at home and it has side effects and it can really harm you. And if somebody gets hurt in Kansas, they can't sue the doctor. They got it from here in Colorado because of some liability protections that were just passed in the House yesterday.
That's insane.
Oh, I mean, the whole thing is insane. I mean, Joan, they don't even know how many abortion clinics are in Colorado. CDPHE doesn't even have a record. They have zero medical oversight. I'll say that again. Outside of the initial licensing of the doctor sometime in his career, 25 years prior, there is zero medical oversight of abortion facilities.
They know. Believe me, they know. They're just not telling you.
Yeah, well, I think they want to keep it off any record. We used to run bills down there. Stephanie Luck would run this bill. She would just go, okay, we all agree that a woman getting an abortion, not a good thing, right? Like whether you believe it's pro-life, or it's not a baby, whatever, women getting this, maybe not a good thing, okay? So how about we just ask them why they're getting an abortion? So that if it's financial for some reason, maybe we can help them out. If it's rape, well, then we know that people are getting abortions because of rape. How about we just know why people are getting abortions so we can implement some form of public policy to try to address it? And they wouldn't even allow that to happen. You can't even ask a person why they're getting an abortion in the state of Colorado.
That's nuts. Did they ever get the doctor out of Pueblo that was doing the late-term abortions?
That one, I don't know. Dr. Hearn, I know, has retired. So one of the funny things I run into when I go down to these progressive protests and I see someone that's pro-choice and I just ask them about late-term abortion, like literally like right before a child is about to be born, could totally live outside the womb, all that stuff. And they go, that's not happening. It's not happening in the state. And I'm like, Have you heard of Dr. Hearn up in Boulder? Like, he's literally depicted in the Atlantic for the late-term abortions he does. And he admits in that article in the Atlantic that he's done third trimester abortions simply because the parents didn't like the sex of the child. Which they could change now, apparently.
No, that Atlantic is just the most horrid rag. There's just, I don't know. I'm just astonished. The part that's kind of interesting is, why did they do this on Sunday?
And then run it through, not allow any debate to happen. I think there's a level of arrogance that Democrats have embraced because they know they have total control of the state. They can pretty much do whatever they want. There's not going to pay any consequence to this. That, I hope, is the final turnaround for voters in the state of Colorado, where you're just going, you guys you're driving a social agenda. Remember how they always blame conservatives and say conservatives, you're all about the social issues. You're all about, no. We're not even near committed to the social issues the same way radical progressives are. You're seeing it at the state capitol. They're ramming this stuff through, no debate, and pulling lawmakers in on Sunday. But, Joan, we got to get to You Choose the News. Sure appreciate your call today. And as Joan said, we're going to be in Lakewood next Wednesday. So going to the IHOP. That's the 16th, I think?
Yeah, 16th. That'll be fun. Yeah, the one in Belmar. We'll be there, $7.10, get the full breakfast. This will be good. This is going to be a lot of fun to get over on the west side of town. We're excited to see everybody out there.
Bill is always the most popular one at these, so come, take a picture with Bill.
I just wander around. Wander around and I'm annoying.
There, dude. Did you see, there's this great Kelly Clarkson where they had this guy named Tanner, who's part of this dating show on Netflix, but he gets to meet Jack Black for the first time.
Oh, I did see that. Yeah,
and Jack Black runs in, and this guy gets so excited to see Jack Black. That's how people are when you walk in.
No, not at all.
They get so excited.
It was very fun, though. Yeah, that was great with Jack Black. That was really neat. On a side note, my kids, a couple of kids went this weekend to go see the Minecraft movie. Yeah, that was, from what they were saying, that was funny.
I've heard it's good.
Oh, no, I heard it's awful.
Really?
Oh, I heard it's atrocious.
Wow.
As far as a paper-thin plot. Things that they bring up plot points, they never refer back to. They don't explain things. They just randomly go to different directions. No clue at all. However, the viewing was absolutely fantastic, according to the two that went, because
nobody else was there.
No, it was very full.
Yeah,
it was very full. It was a 9:00 showing. God, I can't remember if it was Friday or Saturday night. But obviously, everybody had pre-gamed at the bar. So, and they were all in their 30s. They said we were the youngest kids there by far.
30s that play Minecraft?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's been around that long. Absolutely.
What?
And so it's easily been around that long.
43.
And so they said that, we'd see things that would happen and people would cheer for the fact that it would happen. So it was really kind of cool.
All right, we got You Choose the News coming up. You're listening to the Jeff and Bill Show.
This is Denver's Talk Leader, News Talk 710 KNUS.
Well, for all of us waking up to the shock that we're going to be paying for other people's abortions and trans surgeries, we might need a little moment of levity. And, Bill, let's give the folks some You Choose the News.
Yes, good morning. It is that time of the morning where we get to play You Choose the News, America's favorite fake radio news game show. Yeah, so we have scoured the interwebs for mere moments this morning to find really dumb stories about us humans, giving them even more ridiculous headlines to play this fake radio news game show. Why? Because nobody in charge is awake at this hour. Yes, we're going to take full advantage of being left unsupervised, so lesson to everybody. Alrighty, Blake Olson joining us from the news department. Jeff Hunt in the studio. Here are your headlines, gentlemen. Headline number 1, intelligence is not a legal term. Headline number 2, Saturday nights all right for stealing. Headline number 3, fame was her downfall. And headline number 4, a lot of emotional support.
A lot of emotional support.
Yes, a lot of emotional support on this one. We find ourselves in Nevada, in the area of Pahrump. Art Bell fans will know that one very well. And we drift on over to the home of Carl Mitchell. Carl recently received a visit from the authorities because of the amount of, well, let's just say, emotional support animals he has on his property. Now, that wouldn't be usually a big deal until you find out those emotional support animals are tigers. Yes, he's owned tigers for several years and has been violating county ordinances and special condition permits by simply not getting them. When the authorities showed up at his place, Mitchell said he would release the animals if they tried to arrest him. Just like Mr. Burns released the hounds.
Release the hounds,
Yes.
yeah, exactly.
Sheriff said the tigers were in large fenced enclosures, locks on them. The office was working to move them to a sanctuary. He said they're actually his emotional support animals. It stems from his military service in the Vietnam War. But a judge says, no, you need special permits, and those are exotic animals. They don't qualify, really. So, yes. And again, special, emotional support animals with giant teethuses and huge claws. Okay, that's interesting. That's different. Just different. All righty.
It's one way to deal with your emotional issues.
Yes, exactly.
That's right.
Yes. Teach them a lesson. Okay, Blake Olson in the news department. Intelligence is not a legal term. Saturday night's all right for stealing, or fame was her downfall.
Fame was her downfall.
Yes, fame was her downfall. We find ourselves in Singapore for this one. An 84-year-old British woman has been arrested for her suspected involvement in a series of cheating cases after her victim saw she was featured as a scammer in a documentary on Netflix. Uh-oh. She was featured in Netflix Con Mum, a crime documentary about a chef whose life was upended by a jet-setting, champagne-sipping, hotel-hopping woman who claims to be his mother. The Singapore Police Force say they've received several reports since the Netflix Con Mum has made its debut in their country, claiming that, hey, wait, I know that lady. She's asking me for money right now. Yes. Yeah. And she is using the mum thing. She's talking about the fact that she's rich and she just found them and they're long lost kids and she's going to give them inheritance and stuff like that. So, yes, exactly. Wow. She was conning them. Yeah. Alrighty. Jeff Hunt, final choice this morning, sir. Intelligence is not a legal term, or Saturday night's all right for stealing.
Saturday night.
Yeah, Saturday night's all right for stealing. Those of you may recognize the Elton John song. And here we find a conversation between Patti LaBelle and Elton John. Recently, Patti LaBelle was talking about her love of Elton John, except for that time that she stole her Tupperware. Yes. Patti LaBelle details an incident on her appearance recently in a talk show that occurred back in the 60s. Now, she was basically sitting around. She invited a bunch of musicians, which included a very, very, very young Elton John at the time, over to her place to play cards. Well, Patti LaBelle's a bit of a card shark. She took all of their money. Everything.
Nice.
In fact, she said, but she felt bad about it, so she made them some food and put it in the Tupperware to take home. Said a lot of the other musicians returned the Tupperware except for young Elton John. Never returned the Tupperware.
Oh. She held on to that?
Yeah, she was still upset about it, but she says never fear. Once they collaborated on Your Song for her Classic Moments album in 2005, everything was good because during the piano session, she reminded Elton John of not having the Tupperware. He takes off a ring, hands it to her, and says, "Here's your Tupperware," and that moment is captured on video.
Oh,
yes, you paid her back.
Saturday.
Yeah.
Saturday.
That's all right, folks. All right, that is the end of You Choose the News. Back to you, sir.
All right. Did you see the Disney movie just tank in the box office? So we're going to talk with Dr. Alex McFarland about it. You're listening to The Jeff and Bill Show.
This is Denver's Talk Leader News Talk 710 KNUS.
It is 7 a.m. in the Mile High City on this Monday, April 7th, 2025. Good morning, Denver, Colorado. You've tuned into the Jeff and Bill's Show, News Talk 710 KNUS. I'm your co-host, Jeff Hunt, along with Bill Thorpe, bringing you the freshest insights and hottest takes from the right, left, and center. Congratulations, you're waking up in the greatest country in history. Donald Trump's your president. We're off and running. We got an entire show planned for you of engaging conversations, critical analysis, but most importantly, your phone calls and texts, because this is where Denver's voice is heard loud and clear. So grab a cup of coffee, Denver. Let's dive into the issues that matter most to you right here, right now. Coming up after news and comment with Blake Olson, Dr. Alex McFarland's going to join us. He's a youth, religion, and culture expert. Teaches down at Charis Bible College in Colorado Springs. We're going to talk about this Disney Snow White movie. My goodness, was this a bust at the box office? I think at this point bringing in about $168 million. It needs $500 million to break even. Not even close. What's happening there? What's happening to Disney? We'll get into this conversation, but now it's time for Blake Olson.
Blake Olson.
Blake Olson, news and comment.
Good morning. Happy Monday. 32 and sunny in Denver. Expecting a high of 66 today. The 7-10 5-day forecast is coming up. Our top story.
So they pulled us in for third and final readings on 4, I would say, egregious bills, and they let us talk on 2 of them, and then saw that we were going to put up a little bit of a fight, and Rule 16'd us on the final 2, which means that there's no debate whatsoever.
State Rep Brandy Bradley on with Jeff and Billy this morning. What a great way to spend your Sunday, watching the death cult left in this state try to lead our beautiful state into hell.
So the first bill was taxpayer-funded abortion. We didn't argue abortion. We get that abortion, 62% of people have voted for that to be enshrined in our Constitution. What they didn't vote for was a continuous appropriation that we tried to remove from the bill. Amendment 79 didn't say anything about a continuous appropriation. We tried to have statistical evidence about abortion first, second, third trimester. They don't want any of that on the public records. They don't want to know how many are done. They don't want to know how much the state is spending on them. We have federal funds, and if those federal funds are used for anything other than the Hyde Amendment, we're going to be in big trouble as a state. And so there was a lot of transparency that we tried to put into this, what we think is a very bad bill, and they didn't accept any of those amendments.
And it got worse with the misgendering, your child law, all that garbage, and the majority of people, hey, they don't support this, but you got to fight back. This is absolutely horrible. God bless her and the conservatives for fighting on Sunday. 2 people are dead following a shooting outside Foothills Mall in Fort Collins. Police say the 2 victims were on a sidewalk outside the mall when the shooting happened around 5 o'clock on Saturday night. The unidentified teen was taken into custody Sunday. An unidentified teen was taken into custody on Sunday as a part of the investigation. Police believe the shooting may be gang-related. Then just northeast of Greeley, residents were evacuated, and a small elementary school canceled classes this morning after an incident at an oil and gas facility south of Weld County Road 70. It was called a containment issue. Residents evacuated as a precaution. DJT on Truth Social saying that we have massive deficits with China, the EU, and many others. The only way this problem can be cured is with tariffs, which are now bringing tens of billions of dollars into the USA. DJT says they're already in effect and a beautiful thing to behold. The surplus with these countries has grown, and we're going to reverse it quickly.
I've spoken to many countries. They all want to do, just so you understand the power of what I'm doing, every country is calling and being very solicitous of us. Very, very nice. They're being very nice. And we have to be able to justify. This is not sustainable. The United States can't lose $1.9 trillion on trade. We can't do that and also spend a lot of money on NATO in order to protect European nations. We cover them with military, then we lose money on trade. The whole thing is crazy. And I got elected on that basis. We explained it. You know, the American people understand it a lot better than the media. But the media understands it. And much of the media writes correctly about it, I must say.
And after short-term panic fades, Americans will see the benefits. Senator Coach Tommy Tuberville.
100%. You know, we're going to have some short-term pain with long-term gain. There's a lot of people that are a little skeptical, but we have to change course. We cannot continue to do the same thing. It's like playing football. If you keep running the ball up the middle and you're not getting any traction, you got to start throwing the ball. That's what President Trump's doing. He's a businessman. He's the first president that's really stood up and say enough of other countries ripping us off.
And then there's Stephen Colbert, the former comedian who was never funny. Barry Sotero's good buddy.
One bit of good news coming out of all this. It's all pretty solid proof that there is no deep state. Because if there was, they would have stopped this. Okay? But if they do exist...
That's the assassination attempt. What are you talking about?
Exactly. Well, what is he saying? I mean, that's the point, Jack Wagon. I mean, trying to get rid of the deep state. That's why they fired 5 people last week.
Just want to say to the cabal of financial and governmental elites who pull all the strings behind the scenes, maybe...
Yeah, your buddies, by the way.
Put a pause on your 5G chip JFK Jr. adrenochrome chemtrail orgy and jump in here, because we're f***ing dying. Fidelio.
You're dying? Really? Nobody's dying. Shut up, idiot. A federal judge is not backing down from her order to have a Maryland man return from El Salvador. U.S. District Court Judge Paulina Zenas has denied a Justice Department request for a stay on her order to have Gilmore Abrego Garcia, whatever, return to the U.S. Yesterday's 22-page ruling called 22 pages called the ruling. The detention and deportation of Garcia wholly lawless. She's doing the work of George Soros. Once again, doing a nice job. 4 girls are recovering after they were apparently attacked by their uncle with a meat cleaver in Brooklyn. People say, the police, I've said that 5 times today. Police say an 11-year-old girl called 911 and said her uncle was attacking her and her sisters. Officers responded to the home on Sunday and ultimately shot the man. He's now hospitalized in critical condition. Despite their injuries, the girls are all expected to survive, thank God. It's unclear what motivated the brutal attack, but police say the man had a history of mental illness. You think?
But no, look, he's just trying to find a seam and know that, hey, I'm going to try to force it to him if he's open.
Here is Ovechkin. Shoots. He scores! He scores! Number 895!
Wow, what a day. Alex Ovechkin breaks the Great Ones record for number of goals. Gretzky was on hand with FBI Director Kash Patel. The Avs celebrated for him as well. I'm sure they host the Golden Knights tomorrow. The entire hockey world celebrating Alex Ovechkin today. The national championship tonight, Houston and Florida. It'll be the Cougs and Florida. First time since '84 that Houston has been in the championship. Phi Slamma Jamma, you may remember them, one of the great teams of all time. So Houston and Florida tonight. UConn wins their 12th women's championship. The Rockies finally win game number 2, 12-5 over the A's, and the Nuggets fall to the Pacers 125-120. 25 in Englewood, 30 in Arvada, 32 in Denver. Jeff and Billy continue Monday morning. Blake Olson News Talk 710 KNUS.
Back to mild spring weather for Denver in the Front Range this week. Not much going to be happening. We'll be mid-60s today, a mix of high clouds and sun, near 40 tonight, all the way to the lower 70s, cloudy and breezy Tuesday. Upper 60s, breezy Wednesday. 60s Thursday, back to the 70s for Friday and into the weekend. Weather sponsored by Colorado's Best Roofing, reminding you to protect your home from the harsh Colorado weather and schedule your free no-obligation roof inspection today at roofingcolorado.com. That's roofingcolorado.com. Meteorologist Don Day in the 710 KNUS Weather Center.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. So what happened with Disney and its live-action remake of Snow White? Is Disney going woke? Is it learning from all this? Well, joining us to give us some comments, Dr. Alex McFarland. He's a youth and religion and culture expert. He's the author of more than 20 books and is heard live daily on the 200-plus stations of the American Family Radio Network. He serves as director of Worldview for Charis Bible College down in Woodland Park and co-hosts the Truth and Liberty TV broadcast. Dr. McFarland, thanks for taking time to join the Jeff and Bill Show today.
Yes, good morning.
Well, good morning. It's a great honor to be with you.
Oh, have you gone to see the Snow White movie? I haven't. I don't have much interest in it. I don't think a lot of people do either, but Disney's struggling with this one. Your thoughts, sir?
Well, you know what's wild is Friday I released this article that I wrote, and I spent like 2 or 3 weeks doing research behind the film. So I went to get my haircut Friday morning, and at the place where I was getting my haircut, it was a mom, and there were pictures of she and her daughter. Her daughter was like 11, and they go to Disneyland in Florida, or Walt Disney World. So, you know, this is a prime demographic for selling this movie, right? So I'm sitting there, and I said, hey, have you gone to see the new Snow White? And she said, and I won't repeat the word, no. And I said, really? And this is her word. She said, and I'd already released my article. I wish I could have put this in it. She said, I would call myself a Disney super fan, but taking all the cartoons and making them live action, and then woke live action, no less, it's a cash grab. And she said, my little girl, before I could even discuss it, she said, Mommy, I don't really want to see that because the child, apparently, according to the mom, much loved the animated version, which is, you know, from 1937. But anyway, my point is there's been just this perfect storm of negative buzz around the Snow White release. But I thought it was pretty wild. This lady cutting my hair just remarked that she was in some, you know, Disney superfan web ring, and the general sentiment among the Disney superfans is all these live action remakes that just horribly spin the stories. It's a cash grab, and they said, no thanks, not going to play. Hence a $125 million loss on the part of Disney.
At least that. I mean, they spent, gosh, I had it here a second ago, $240 to $270 just making the film. And then I marketed probably a dozen major motion pictures. Not a ton, but worked a little bit on that side. And you spend what you do on budget on publicity and advertising. So typically, if you spend $225 million on budget, you're going to spend another $225 million in publicity and advertising. So you're near $500 million at this point, and they've brought in $168.4 million, and so it is definitely crashing. I've tried to watch some of the live remakes. They're not that good. I watched the one on my kids were watching it, and I came in and out, and it was the one on Lion King. And it just didn't. Just didn't seem that good. I think there's people are probably frustrated with that. But in this case too, you have Disney and its own stars bashing the original storyline that people grew up with and enjoyed so much. How much does bashing the history and traditions of Disney play into the failure of Snow White here?
Yeah, I mean, goodness gracious, if you're going to milk a franchise for all the money you can get out of it, maybe in the lead up to the release, you don't bash it. And because, look, like Rachel Zegler, who was cast in the lead role, and she was saying that the original story was about the prince who was a stalker, and their remake. She said, and I quote, she said, "This will be the PC Snow White that is less about romance and more about female empowerment." Well, right there, I mean, if you want a tagline for your children's release that is just going to poison public sentiment against it, hey, come see this. It's not about romance and heroism and, saving the life of Snow White from the poisoned apple. It's about female empowerment, and it's PC Snow White. That's like the biggest anti-marketing campaign you could possibly conjure up.
Well, and it's not like, a movie about female empowerment is necessarily wrong, but when you're going to juxtapose it against Snow White, so you're going to go, we are better than the original. We are more enlightened than the original. We have made progress since the original took place. Well, you're just shaming the exact film. If you want to go make an original story about female empowerment, there's a movie like that called Tangled, right? It's all about that. It did just fine. But when you start as you start the premise of the film, hoping that people that loved and enjoyed the original film are now going to somehow join with you in shaming the original premise of the film and then go spend money, it seems like a recipe. Now, we're talking with Dr. Alex McFarland. He works down with Charis Bible College. He's written 20 books. He's a youth culture expert. Dr. McFarland, there also were some political things at play where Gal Gadot, who plays the queen in the film, was an Israeli soldier in support of Israel. And then Rachel, that plays the lead Snow White, was quoting and saying "Free Palestine." You had division within the cast of the film, and then that played into the marketing of the film. So you had people that were against Israel not wanting to see the film, people against the Palestinians not wanting to see the film. They hit both audiences at the same time. And then that contributed to folks not wanting to see the movie as well. Talk to us about that.
Yeah, well, Gal Gadot, or Gadot, however you pronounce it, forgive me. But, she's an Israeli-born citizen of Israel. She fought in the IDF. And so after the Hamas attacks of 2023, she, on social media and in interviews, understandably, she voiced support for her native Israel. Well, that put Rachel Zegler in gear, not only speaking affirmative of, let's just be honest, Hamas terrorism, but speaking ill personally of her co-star. So you've got this, friction between the two leads in the movie, a lot of bad PR. But then, and again, why I said it's a perfect storm. Okay, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. Well, Disney made these seven dwarves, quote, magical creatures, rather, so as not to offend people of size. Well, dwarfism is a legitimate medical condition, and there are some famous actors like George Appleby and Peter Dinklage, who is an award-winning actor. Everybody would recognize him. And so this is just so weird, and I can only imagine the hours of boardroom deliberation that precipitated such decisions. So they're not seven dwarves, and in a live action remake, they make the seven magical creatures CGI, and kind of weird, creepy CGI at that. And so a lot of the little people, and that's the term they use, that are people that were born with dwarfism. Online, some of the actors, many of whom are quite famous, like Jason Acuna, who's known as Wee Man, they were like, okay, so seven little people are now not going to have a job that they could have acted in this film. So now get this. Peter Dinklage was saying that actors with dwarfism are, quote, feeling erased from this film. So Disney says, okay, we will cast a live action small person. We'll make George Appleby a bandit, a bad guy. So the one person in the film with dwarfism is an evil character. I mean, it was just bad optics from every direction. And I want to say this. Hey, I'm not rejoicing that Disney is losing money. I don't want anybody to lose money. You know, it's a free market capitalistic economy. But here's the thing. And the screenwriter, Erin Cressida Wilson, spent 10 years rewriting Snow White. If she really wanted to be gutsy, cutting edge, you want to be an outlier, why don't you amplify the Christian foundation of the Grimm brothers? Jacob and Wilhelm Grimm, the German fairy tale collaborators in the 1800s, produced many books, including Snow White. They're the original people who brought this story to the world. The Grimm brothers were devout Christians. And for a century, Snow White was known as an allegory of biblical themes, the pure Eve, but there's a poisoned apple from a malicious, evil character. The witch represented Satan. The poisoned apple is like the poison apple of sin that the human race ate in the Garden of Eden. And so what a lot of people were saying is, look, you want to be really gutsy? You want to really be out there? Don't spin it woke that you're going to have to shoehorn narrative into the story that was never there. But, you know, at least give a nod to the underlying biblical foundation that was there. Love, heroism, saving a life, you know, good triumphing over evil. But, you know, there's that old saying, go woke, go broke. Again, I take no joy that they're losing money. But our kids, well, I live in the world of youth, children, parenting, values and morals. What our kids don't need is wokeness and left-leaning narrative. What our kids need is truth, character building, ultimately God, of course. But anyway, people are abandoning the film in droves, and maybe Hollywood will get the message that wholesome, family-friendly fare is what people will open up their wallet and support.
That's Dr. Alex McFarland, a youth, religion, and culture expert, joining the Jeff and Bill Show live. Got a question for you. Could we possibly be reading too much into this? Looking at the cultural implications and how they tried to rewrite the story, could it just be a bad movie?
Well, and that's a big part of it, too. I mean, that really is a big part of it, too. In fact, you know, on RogerEbert.com, the reviewer said, Snow White, instead of being the fairest in the land, this film is just, well, fair. You know, and this is the thing. I mean, they're wanting, especially with, you know, AI, to sanitize so many things. I just read an article yesterday about classic rock albums. There's a resurgence of vinyl. That's cool. I grew up with records. I like vinyl. But they're censoring. They're releasing some of these, you know, 180-gram vinyl, pristine, remastered classic albums, but using AI to censor out words and phrases that we now deem offensive. And let me just say, and again, I'm not saying that we should intentionally be offensive or anything like that, but when you're creating art, the driving force should be the quality and the purity and the excellence of the story, not does it meet some DEI punch list.
Yeah, I'm worried that we're putting too much of a jacket on Snow White being a DEI failure when there are other movies out there that have done very well for being termed woke. The one that is probably the most familiar to the audience is the Barbie movie that grossed more than $1 billion worldwide. That was deemed super woke and didn't have any problem finding an audience, even went so far as to earn several famous nominations. The thing that I was reading about Snow White is it's just the lead, that good singer, but not necessarily emotional in delivery. That Gal Gadot playing the evil queen was paper thin at best and maybe one of her worst on-screen performances ever. She doesn't perform as a villain. The other thing I was reading was, of course, the CGI work with the dwarves was just creepy as a whole. And again, I appreciate what you said about not bringing in the little people and not getting people that are smaller actors, Peter Dinklage and the like, using it. But even then, there are ways to bring dwarfs to life using regular sized people, and John Rhys Davies in Lord of the Rings being Gimli is one of the easiest ways to look at that too. But that was expensive. It's much cheaper to just have the computers draw it. And the other one I was reading is that even though they leaned into the CGI aspect of it, it seems that it lost the Disney heart. And one of the reviews I was reading said that even the Enchanted Forest seemed very blah. And the reviewer was saying that the CGI was so awful and off-putting inside of the movie that it kept bringing you out of the story, that rather than getting lost in something like an Avatar, getting lost in the cartoon presentation of the classic Snow White, where you just become part of this animated world, the animation keeps pushing you away and forcing you to realize this is just CGI animation on a screen, that it was done so poorly and executed so badly that it kept pulling you out of the experience of being inside the movie and kept reminding you, oh yeah, you're watching a movie.
Yeah. I mean, I think that Snow White is probably going to jockey with Song of the South as being one of the films quietly scrubbed from Disney's backlist, But again, like with the Barbie story, I know it was woke, and I saw that movie. I guess that was the summer of '23, but it was pretty funny, and it was well written. And let me say, Barbie is probably a bigger franchise in the lives of a lot of American little girls and children. So I think there's some reasons. I'm not saying that DEI is a necessary, guaranteed recipe for a box office bomb. But again, for one thing, there is a lesson here for parents to understand that worldview is present in all art, literature, and music. For good or for ill, the author or author's worldview will come through. And what we can do, not try to shield our kids from everything, because we're in a world I think it's very counterproductive to try to insulate kids from everything. But what we can teach is discernment and truth. And as a Christian leader, try to impart Christian values. Christian parents teach their kids to, love the Lord, love their family, be a person of character. But, I think we can appreciate good entertainment. We ought to make, the moms and the dads need to make good, mature entertainment decisions for their families. But at any rate, family-friendly fare. I wish Hollywood would really believe this. And 20 years ago, I was writing for Plugged In magazine for Focus on the Family. I had the privilege of working there for a number of years. And, family-friendly, uplifting, God-honoring, and patriotic, family values entertainment, always does well. It really always does well. And so, all of these entertainment titans and the tech overlords that have been the beneficiaries of a prosperous America, and that prosperity has come from family, church, hard work, morality, that they need to affirm what gave us this prosperous America, not undermine it.
That's Dr. Alex McFarland, youth and religion culture expert, joining Jeff and Bill live. And I think the bottom line that we can kind of put a pin on it is that just tell a good story. That when you come to the table wanting to say, I'm going to rewrite Snow White as a woke fairy tale, it's not going to work. But if you just rewrite a story and you just write a story and make it compelling, if it has elements of being woke or not, as long as it is a good story, it will find an audience. I think your example of Barbie is a great example there. And I also think that you can also mess up C.S. Lewis and Chronicles of Narnia if you tried hard enough. Because if you made that and you tried to, and you told that in a way that wasn't honoring what the actual text was and making sure that you told the story, nobody's going to go out there and want to see the Voyage of the Dawn Treader be wokeified. No one's going to go out there for Prince Caspian and look at that either, and trying to change the narrative inside of that story and changing what they were doing. And I think that's kind of the issue here, is that when they're changing the core narrative of the story, something goes sideways. There were things about Little Mermaid. People were worried about that being a little too woke, and there were issues with the lead in that movie as well. But that managed to make over $500 million worldwide because they still stuck more or less to the traditional telling of the story. And I think that helps. They just made a decent movie. And then Snow White, for all intents and purposes, all the reviews that I've seen is movie just sucks. The movie's just really
Bill,
bad.
Do you think though that the Rachel Ziegler going out there and getting as political as she did with the F-bomb she dropped did anything to sabotage this film?
I'm not certain that it sabotaged. It didn't help. That's the idea. It didn't help. I'm not certain about how much it hurt. I think there is some people there's some families and other people that weren't going to consider it anymore because of either her politics, the way that she handled herself. But I think that didn't necessarily scare away too many people. And the only people are I go back to the doctor's conversation earlier with the hairstylist, who they are just super, super, super big Disney fans. But I'm not certain how much just the statements of her would have driven the family away. I think it was a culmination of it being a bad movie and bad presentation and bad storyline.
Dr. McFarlane, your thoughts?
Yeah. Well, and I think it was in Vanity Fair that Rachel Ziegler, she said, and this is a near verbatim quote, she was like, if people don't like my films, they shouldn't see them. Now get this. And she goes, speaking of, quote, the public, she goes, I don't need them anyway. Well, when a Hollywood star speaks on record with that level of condescension, there are people that are going to say, okay, thanks. You don't want me to see your film? No problem. I won't, But, hey, there's an old saying in writing. If you want somebody to know the truth, tell them the truth. If you want somebody to love the truth, tell them a story. And good stories in any era, good stories, good plots, something creative and delivered with excellence, that will always find an audience.
That's exactly right. Dr. Alex McFarland, you can learn more about him at alexmcfarland.com. That's alexmcfarland.com. Dr. McFarland, thanks for taking time to join the Jeff and Bill Show
thanks
today.
For your time.
Thanks. You guys are awesome. Thank you.
All right. Would love to hear from you. Phone lines are open, 303-696-1971. Did you stay away from this movie, Snow White, because of it kind of felt like a woke agenda, that type of thing? When I was running the Centennial Institute, we led a petition against the Beauty and the Beast movie. When the director said he wanted to put exclusively gay moments into Beauty and the Beast, driving an agenda, a social agenda. Should we ignore it as conservatives? Just go, it's the Beauty and the Beast, Snow White. Let's go have a fun time anyways. Or should these traditional stories be manipulated to drive a progressive agenda? And should conservatives reject that? What do you think? 303-696-1971. Or text us on the Dan Caplis Law text line at 720-819-5115. And is this cancel culture? Is this a conservative version of cancel culture? At least we're not scribbling swastikas on the sides of movie theaters. All right, you're listening to The Jeff and Bill Show.
This is Denver's talk leader, News Talk 710 KNUS.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. Snow White tanking bigly at the box office. Production budget between 240 and 270 million. You double that for publicity and advertising, you're looking at 500 million minimum to break even, sitting at 168 million in the box office. Why did it tank? Was it a combination of a bad story plus a woke agenda plus disparaging the old story, plus your stars going out there saying, I don't really care if you go to my movie, you conservatives. By the way, I hate Donald Trump. And then you have a division within the stars of one supporting Israel, the other one Palestine, which is just a recipe for a disaster. And that's why, and Disney needs to learn from it. Joining us live online or on the phones is Peter Boyles. Pete, you had an interesting remark on the Grimm brothers.
Yeah, good morning.
First of all, yeah, guys, thanks. I'm on my way to the dentist, and I'm listening to your show like I do in the mornings. And when I was in grad school, I got on to try and understand the rise of anti-Semitism, and particularly beginning in the 20s, although in Germany, of course, to try and understand the rise of Adolf Hitler, you have to understand the culture, much like you guys were talking about this morning. What are we watching? But the Grimm brothers were collectors of stories. They were not writers. Hans Christian Andersen was a writer of stories, but he was also a collector. In this culture of Bavarian Germany, prior to the beginnings of industrialization, they were Lutherans, and if you know, in the end of Luther's life, he became a tremendous anti-Semite. Long story short, the Disney people cleaned up the Grimm stories because it wasn't always witches, and it wasn't always, it was principally Jews. And when the Grimms collected the stories, the Jews were the evil ones, not the witches. And Disney, in fact, and Walt Disney and his illustrators were smart enough to know that you can't do that. And so they cleaned them up, much like these, and I agree with you, Jeff, I agree with you, Billy. What they're doing to this stuff is taking a film like Snow White that has so much historical value, and they apparently they wrecked it. I read a couple of critiques as well, and why would you use the F word? It's like, what are these people thinking? So anyhow, but the Grimms were collectors and the bad guys, setting the stage for the rise of the Fuhrer. Stuff was always laying right underneath, as Freud said, and what lies beneath. So I just wanted to, with respect to the doctor, I don't think the Grimms were as portrayed.
Yeah, as great Christian authors. Yeah, they wrote a book called they wrote a book called The Jew Among Thorns.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, these guys, but who they were 19th century Lutherans. They were Christians. Now they were the Lutheran Church. When if you see the pictures of Nazi Germany, the altars of Lutheran churches with swastikas on the altars. I mean, it's part of the culture. It's part of the rise of this unbelievable thought process. But no, the Grimms were who they were, and you can't turn around and say they were good Christian men. Yeah, they were of their time, but are they today? That's not my call.
Now, New York Post is reporting that after the fallout from Snow White box office bomb, Disney is pausing the Tangled remake and thinking through maybe this isn't the best thing to do. But, I mean, I don't think the remakes are necessarily the issue. I think in this case it was a combination of other factors, and you got a really unlikable lead in this. I don't know. Maybe because I'm a conservative. I haven't seen anything else she's really done, and everything I've seen are these kind of headlines about how she doesn't like conservatives and how much she hates Donald Trump and all that stuff. And to me, she just comes across as unlikable. So why would I want to go spend money at a movie she stars in?
Yeah, but yet again, you and obviously Bill, you guys, this is your job, this is your passion to understand this. There's other people that say, well, I'll take my kids to see Snow White. And not
a lot of them, apparently.
No, that's right, because today in social media, it just spreads like wildfire. I just finished this morning a piece on Roy Disney's daughter. She's the one that she's a Disney, and she's very anti-corporate America, hates Donald Trump. And I think to myself, isn't that nice?
But there's a great piece too in the weekend in Variety about Paul Rudd. And how Paul has transcended all these different groups, and it comes down to one thing: likability. People just like him. They want to see him. They feel good around him. And so he's transcended all of it. And so when you have a star that goes out there and is bashing half the country and getting into all these political fights, I think it's, and you had a producer, the son of a producer, commenting about how the dad had to fly to New York to tell the lead to knock it off because you're going to cost all these people their jobs.
But time and time again, Hollywood discovers it isn't as important as it thinks it is. Whether it's when they go back to take on UAC or what happened to Jane Fonda. I mean, you get down a list of things. But Bogart, and they take Lauren Bacall, they take the whole airplane back, and they're going to take on UAC. They're going to take on Joe McCarthy, and then suddenly they get a phone call from Jack Warner. Everybody comes home. It's called the moral high ground. Billy and I have talked about it forever, the moral high ground, and they seize it and they think they're superior. They're not. I mean, you've been around them. I've been around them. Billy's been around them. Come on. It's like, and so it goes.
Yeah, they come to the point where they think that because they have these huge box office numbers that then we listen to everything they say, and not understanding that we appreciate the performance, not necessarily the intellectual capacity of the person doing the performance.
Don't drink your own Kool-Aid.
Yep, exactly. Exactly, my
It's
friend.
not good. Start believing
Pete,
yourself.
Good luck at the dentist.
Yes,
Thanks for taking a moment to call in.
Thank you so much.
I got a big day. The grins are there.
Oh,
Thanks,
yes.
Billy. Thanks, guys.
Hey,
Bye.
thank you.
All right, thanks, Pete. All right, we'll continue. You're listening to the Jeff and Bill Show.
This is Denver's Talk Leader, News Talk 710 KNUS.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. Text messages coming in, thanking Peter Boyles for correcting the record there on the Brothers Grimm.
Yeah, that was nice.
They say 0459, conservatives have to watch out for being woke hunting at this point. From everything I read about the Snow White live action movie, there's some woke aspects, but it's more about how distasteful the star is. It's probably a combination of all that. But Bill, I will say, in my community, if the film gets tagged woke, people don't go see it.
Yeah.
And so that's just something to consider when you're trying to bring people in.
The thing is, I somewhat disagree on that because the Barbie movie made more than $1 billion and was tagged as the wokest itty, woke. I mean, there was all sorts of things about how woke it was. They didn't slow that one down at all. So I somewhat disagree with that idea. But however, if because someone tags it as woke that you're just going to decide not to see it, then okay. But that's on you.
Yeah, but there's people out there, and if you're trying to get as many people as you can in to see your movie because money's green, it doesn't matter if it's red or blue. Do you think though that Disney is as woke as they were maybe 3-4 years ago? Do you think things have changed within them?
Here's the thing is that with all of those companies, understand that we talk about, these companies going woke, etc. No, these companies just do what they need to in order to survive based on the current political climate. And the biggest example I will give you is all of the rollback of the DEI policies once Trump got elected by all these large companies. And it's not that they were like so invested in it in the first place. It was because it worked during the political time in order to market, in order to achieve some personal goals. Now that it is not...
Do you think Disney, though, made money off of being woke?
Yeah.
How so?
Yeah. Again, we talked about The Little Mermaid. The Little Mermaid was supposed to be a woke movie and made over $500 million. That's doing pretty good, given the investment inside of it. And there were other movies in there.
Do you think it made that movie in spite of it or because it was woke?
I'm not sure. The thing is, this is the idea is, I think that we spend way too much time as a society trying to ascribe these political motivations to things that don't necessarily have them. We spend way too much time using our politics to define our truth. That we are certain about we're going to go see a movie or not go see a movie, whether or not it's tagged as woke. Not worried about going and seeing a movie or not going and seeing the movie to see if the movie is actually good. Because some great woke movies out there.
There were Zooms that came out with Disney where you had LGBT activists going, oh no, we're pushing this agenda in all aspects of our films. Like there were actual videos that came out that were like, we're driving the LGBTQ agenda through our movies right now.
And during the political climate at that time, makes a heck of a lot of sense. But those Zooms don't exist right now. Just like many of these other DEI policies, even though some of the mechanisms behind them aren't disappearing inside these corporations, they're stepping away from them because of the politics, because we allow our politics to define our truth. We should really just decide whether or not it's a good movie and then go see it or not.
All right, so on Friday, George Teal joined us to argue that Douglas County should be a home rule county. Laura Thomas is going to respond. You're listening to Jeff and Bill.
This is KNUS.
It is 8 a.m. in the Mile High City on this Monday, April 7th, 2025. Good morning, Denver, Colorado. You've tuned into the Jeff and Bill Show, News Talk 710 KNUS. I'm your co-host, Jeff Hunt, along with Bill Thorpe, bringing you the freshest insights and hottest takes from the right, left, and center. Coming up after news and comment with Blake Olson. Laura Thomas joins us, former Douglas County Commissioner. She's also a candidate now for Metro District, responding to George Teal, who we had in studio on Friday. George was promoting that Douglas County become a home rule county. Laura's got some thoughts on that. She's going to give us her response. You're not going to want to miss it, because this is a vote hitting Douglas County this spring and fall. So you want to be well informed, and that's exactly what we do here on the Jeff and Bill Show. But now is time for Blake Olson.
Blake Olson.
Blake Olson, news and comment.
Good morning, Monday. 37 and sunny in Denver, expecting a high of 66 today. The 7-10 5-day forecast is coming up. Our top story.
With China, it's $1 trillion, and we have to solve our trade deficit with China. We have $1 trillion trade deficit with China. Hundreds of billions of dollars a year we lose with China.
U.S. stock futures took a beating overnight as the markets continue to react to the president's announcement of new tariffs. But that's what's going to happen when you try to clean up everything that's gone on for 50 or 60 years.
And unless we solve that problem, I'm not going to make a deal. Now, I'm willing to deal with China, but they have to solve their surplus. We have a tremendous deficit problem with China. They have a surplus of at least $1 trillion a year. I think it's like $1.1 trillion. And I want that solved. And no other president's taken it on. I had to take it on the last time, and then we had a rigged election. No other president's taken it on. And so China is, they say the market's spoken. China is right now taking a big hit because everyone knows we're right.
1 million plus people took part in anti-Trump protests over the weekend. Rallies were held in all 50 states, and they were well organized. And around the world in response to the Trump administration's actions. Organizers of the hands-off protests also took aim at Elon, saying they have 3 demands: an end to the billionaire takeover and rampant corruption. Maybe you should talk to George Soros about that. Of the Trump administration, that's what they say, and an end to slashing federal funds for Medicaid. They haven't done that. Social Security and other programs working people rely on. Well, they haven't touched Medicaid and Medicare. Oh, my goodness. And then an end to the attacks on immigrants. They have not attacked immigrants. They've gone after illegal immigrants who don't belong here. Trans people, of course, and other communities. Man, that is interesting. All right, these lefties tried to kill Trump 2 times, and Victor Davis Hanson says DJT's having some fun with the commies.
Well, that didn't last long. Maybe I'll say that I'll make Canada the 51st state. Oh, my God. How about invading Greenland? I got a better idea. I'm going to run for a 3rd term and violate the Constitution. He's not going to do any of that. But he wants to make them go insane. And that's what they're doing. And you know what? I wouldn't do that. And if I was president right now, the Democrats would probably have a 40%. He's president, he's got them down to 23 because he understands their mentality and what makes them go nuts. And when they go nuts, they show who they are, and they're absolutely blank crazy.
Exactly. HHS Secretary RFK Jr. says vaccines are the best way to stop the spread of measles. Some people lie and say he's anti-vaccine. He's not. It just depends on the vaccine. He likes life. Imagine that. Kennedy traveled to Texas Sunday, where he visited the epicenter of a measles outbreak that's now killed 2 children. RFK Jr. announced that he's deployed a team of supply pharmacies with the measles vaccine. State Rep Brandy Bradley on with Jeff and Billy this morning, and what a great way to spend your Sunday, watching the death cult left in this state try to lead our beautiful state into hell and jam down 4 evil bills, including more pro-abortion garbage. Republicans just want to track the data.
They don't want any of that on the public records. They don't want to know how many are done. They don't want to know how much the state is spending on them. We have federal funds, and if those federal funds are used for anything other than the Hyde Amendment, we're going to be in big trouble as a state. And so there's a lot of transparency that we try to put into this, what we think is a very bad bill, and they didn't accept any of those amendments.
And it got worse with the misgendering your child law. We'll groom your kids and you'll shut up and take it. The majority of people don't support this excrement. We've got to fight back. This is absolutely horrible. Great job by Brandy Bradley. Dr. Alex McFarland, Youth, Religion, and Culture, talking woke Disney movies last hour with the fellas. They ruined a classic Snow White. How about that? And he's heard some things in casual conversation.
She and her daughter was like 11, and they go to Disneyland in Florida, or Walt Disney World. So, this is a prime demographic for selling this movie, right? So I'm sitting there, and I said, hey, have you gone to see the new Snow White? And she said, and I won't repeat the words, no. And I said, really? And this is her word. She said, and I'd already released my article. I wish I could have put this in it. She said, I would call myself a Disney super fan, but taking all the cartoons and making them live action, and then woke live action, no less, it's a cash grab. And she said, my little girl, before I could even discuss it, she said, Mommy, I don't really want to see that.
Honestly, a better remake would have been this.
All right, people, listen the hell up. They call me Snow White, but don't ask me why. It sure ain't how I describe this scenario. And yeah, I know what you're thinking. This dress is way too frilly. But I didn't ask for any of this. 1 minute I'm polishing floors and dodging my stepmother's side eye, and the next, I'm on the run.
But no, look, he's just trying to find a seam and know that, hey, we're going to try to force it to him if he's open.
Here is Ovechkin, shoots, he scores! He scores! Number 895!
And what a day for Alex Ovechkin. Breaks Wayne Gretzky's, the great one's, record for number of goals. Gretzky was on hand with FBI Director Kash Patel, and that was a big day. The Avs, by the way, play host to the Golden Knights tomorrow. Rockies finally win game number 2, 12-5 over the A's. Nuggets fall to the Pacers 125-120. National championship tonight, college basketball, Houston and Florida. UConn wins another women's championship over the weekend. They just continue to dominate. Pretty amazing. 33 in Castle Pines, 35 in Lakewood, 37 in Denver. Jeff and Billy continue.
Now pass me that apple. And while you're at it, maybe some combat boots, because I've had enough of these slippers.
Blake Olson, News Talk 710, KNUS.
Back to mild spring weather for Denver in the Front Range this week. Not much going to be happening. We'll be mid-60s today, a mix of high clouds and sun, near 40 tonight, all the way to the lower 70s, cloudy and breezy Tuesday. Upper 60s, breezy Wednesday, 60s Thursday, back to the 70s for Friday and into the weekend. Weather sponsored by Colorado's Best Roofing, reminding you to protect your home from the harsh Colorado weather and schedule your free no-obligation roof inspection today at roofingcolorado.com. That's roofingcolorado.com. Meteorologist Don Day in the 710 KNUS Weather Center.
All right, now second, we're going to be joined by Laura Thomas. She's live in studio. I want to talk to you first about our friends over at Advanced Hair Restoration, rated again by Westward. It's top hair restoration company in Colorado. For many of us, it's happening. Your hair might be thinning, your crown's disappearing. Maybe hair loss has you feeling your identity is lost altogether. Well, I got good news for you. It's an incredible yet simple one-day treatment that starts growing your own natural hair the very next day, and it's guaranteed to grow for life. It's the Advanced FUE from Advanced Hair. Look, we've all seen the pills and lotions that come with monthly subscriptions. They help retain what you have, but what if what you want is your own natural hair permanently in specific areas. Well, from advanced hair state-of-the-art facilities to world-class Dr. Tanya Pauls, it's not maybe your hair will regrow. It's guaranteed that your new hair will grow. You decide how much, how thick, and where. It's why Advanced Hair is the winner of Westward's Best of Denver at least 2 years in a row. And I saw a video the other day of all of the movie stars that have gotten their hairs done, Matthew McConaughey, all that. Guys, you want to have that movie star hairstyle? You got to go get your hair done, and Advanced Hair is the place to do it. So for your free consultation, $250 off and 250 free hair grafts. Call 720-459-HAIR. That's 720-459-HAIR or advancedhair.com. That's advancedhair.com. All right, so Friday, George Teal was in studio here at 710 KNUS, and he, along with Abe Layden and Kevin Van Winkle, want to bring forth the idea that Douglas County becomes a home rule county. And we talked about what that means. And I saw on social media that Laura Thomas, former Douglas County Commissioner, was pushing back on this idea. I asked George some of those questions. He responded, and then over the weekend spoke with you because we like to have debates on this show here. And you were willing to come on. So thank you, Laura Thomas, for willing to come on and join us today. Let's talk about why the home rule county idea would be bad for Douglas County. And this is important because voters in Douglas County are going to weigh in on this coming up here in June. So from your perspective, Laura Thomas, former Douglas County Commissioner, why shouldn't we become a home rule county?
Great, Jeff. First of all, thank you for letting me be in here in the studio because I think it's really important for the citizens to understand all sides of this. In 2022, I was a Douglas County Commissioner, and our County Attorney Lance Ingalls spent a lot of time going through the statutes with us and explaining what the statute, even it's Article 14 of the state constitution that talks about home rule. And what it says is that a home rule county has the power to adopt a home rule charter establishing the organization and structure of county government. But the county home rule does not allow commissioners to opt out of state laws that we don't like. And that's an important thing that people need to understand because when we talked about this in 2022, it was really clear. We could do things like extend term limits. We could increase salaries for elected officials. We could, in Weld County, they do not elect a coroner or the treasurer. They are appointed. It's structural things that a home rule county can do. A home rule county is very different from a home rule municipality.
Because when George Teal was here, I asked him about things like Senate Bill 3, right? The state capitol is going to put a lot of restrictions on the ability of somebody to purchase a semi-automatic weapon. Would home rule give more flexibility to a place like Douglas County with regards to the Second Amendment? And he said, you got to defer to the idea that during the charter, this is something we could do. So, for instance, illegal immigration and coordinating with law enforcement and ICE, he said that they could put a line into the charter saying that local law enforcement should have the ability to coordinate with all federal entities, that type of stuff. Are you saying that we wouldn't be able, Douglas County wouldn't be able to do that if they became a home rule county?
So, Jeff, let me tell you, the things you just talked about are things that, as a conservative, that I support. I do not like the overreach of state government and what they are doing. And as a retired state patrol officer, I understand the importance of working with ICE. I have an email that was sent to another talk show host, Ross Kaminsky, when he sent an email to the Attorney General's office and said, can a home rule county opt out of laws they don't like? And I am reading the first paragraph from that email that was sent from a staffer at the Attorney General's office. It says the bottom line is the county home rule constitutional amendment does not give a home rule county the ability to ignore or opt out from complying with any state law that it disagrees with. In fact, the state constitution states that, and I quote, a home rule county shall provide all mandatory county functions, services, and facilities, and shall exercise all mandatory powers as may be required by statute. That comes right out of the Colorado Constitution, Article 14. Section 16, Parent 3.
Yeah. So are you saying that George Teal is promising something he might not be able to deliver with regards to being a home rule county?
That's exactly what I'm saying.
Yeah. So you disagree with the idea of becoming a home rule county at all, or are you frustrated that the county commissioners are over-promising on what they can deliver? You mentioned structurally that the Douglas County would be able to determine some of its government structure. Is that a problem for Douglas County? Do you not want them to be a home rule county at all?
I've been an elected official in Douglas County for 12 years, 4 as the coroner, 8 as a commissioner. And Jeff, I don't see anything that is going on in county government that would require the county to go through a $500,000 election in June, have 21 people write a charter, and then change things. Things are working well in Douglas County. So this is being promised for something that cannot be delivered.
So why do you think they're doing this? What's the reason? Do you believe that George Teal and Kevin Van Winkle, Abe Layden are wrong in their assessment? They're just misled in their assessment, or do you think they're trying to do this for other reasons?
I wish I could answer that, but here's the problem. There have been no public meetings. There have been no discussions that the citizens have been able to listen to about why home rule was being discussed. All of a sudden, on Monday, March 24th, an email went out at 12:47 p.m. that said, hey, tomorrow at 1 o'clock, the commissioners are going to have a special business meeting. And I looked at it, and there were 2 resolutions to go to home rule, to start the process. And I'm like, wow, I've been paying attention, and there have been no public meetings. The public had no clue that this was even being discussed. So this is something that is being done to the citizens, as opposed to with the citizens, or even that the citizens have brought forward. Let me just add that there are 64 counties in the state of Colorado. 2 are counties that are county and cities. That's Denver and Broomfield. There's only 2 other counties that are home rule, Weld and Pitkin. The reason Weld became a home rule county in 1975 is because there was a very powerful commissioner who had a crony on the board. They were getting everything done they wanted. They were spending too much money. They were hiring employees for loyalty, not merit, and the citizens had enough. So the citizens are who brought forth the home rule. They put in 5 commissioners instead of 3 to break up that power structure. This isn't being done by the citizens. It's being done to the citizens.
We're talking with Laura Thomas. She's a former county commissioner in Douglas County. She is opposed to Douglas County becoming a home rule county. Not necessarily because you disagree with the idea of being a home rule county, but you just don't see it as necessary. Is that right?
It's
at this
not,
point?
You're right, Jeff. It's not necessary, and things are being promised that are not true.
Yeah. I want to ask about some of the things that they are promising. So let's say structurally, because as you mentioned in the amendment, that it has to do with Douglas County structure. So one of the things they want to combat is the restrictions on coordinating with ICE, right? Structurally, could they do that by putting in a charter that says that Darren Weekly and Douglas County sheriffs can work with all members of federal law enforcement? Would that be a structural issue, or do you think that's still outside the bounds of what a home rule county can do?
I think that's outside the bounds. That's not the structure of what the county government is structured to do.
Yeah. Were you a part of the launching the lawsuit, or was that after your tenure against sanctuary city status?
I was still a commissioner when we sued the state over a law that was passed in 2019 and another one in 2023 that prohibited our sheriff's department from working with ICE. I was part, and I supported that lawsuit.
Yeah. So it seems like the county commissioners are trying to find ways to empower Darren Weekly to be able to work and coordinate with ICE to improve the safety of the county. And from your analysis, being a home rule will not allow Darren Weekly to be able to do that.
That is my understanding from the attorneys I've spoken with and the work that I have looked at.
Yeah. Okay. Wow. We're talking with Laura Thomas, former Douglas County Commissioner. Now, we had George Teal in studio on Friday. He was promoting home rule. Abe Layden, Kevin Van Winkle seemed to agree to do that. If you have questions, feel free to give us a call, 303-696-1971, 303-696-1971, or text us on the Dan Caplis Law text line, 720-819-5115. That's 720-819-5115. Now, you've raised concerns as well as about the process they're going around and doing these meetings. They're not being public enough. Now, George said he's going to start to have a lot of public conversations about this. Are you critiquing the fact that they voted to do this before having the conversations with people? Do you want to see more public conversations about this? Give me your insight, Laura Thomas.
So again, this is something that's being done to the citizens of Douglas County, not with the citizens of Douglas County. There were no public meetings. The citizens were completely blindsided when, first of all, this process was put on the ballot. And then second of all, the night before the issue was put on the ballot, an email was sent out by the chair of the Douglas County Republicans. And in that email were the 21 people that had been, according to her email, handpicked by the county commissioners to be on the Charter Commission. There's just a lot of things that have been done behind closed doors without the sunshine, so citizens know what's going on. It makes me wonder, if this is such a great deal, why wasn't it rolled out? Why weren't there a lot of public conversations? Why wasn't there a survey done to see what the citizens think?
And is this vote going to take place now, no matter what? The initial ballot to form this commission, I believe, is going to take place in June, right?
Yes, Jeff. On June 24th, there will be a special election. There's only 2 questions on the ballot. Number 1, do you want to go to home rule? Number 2, elect 6 people from your commissioner district and 3 at large. And guess who the 3 candidates that the commissioners have put forward for at large? George, Abe, and Kevin.
Yeah. I mean, help me understand why, if you think that they can't achieve the home rule, what they're promising to do, protect Second Amendment rights, allow Darren Weekly and the sheriff to be able to interact with ICE, why do you think they're doing this then? And why do they want that role? They seem really optimistic about the freedom this is going to give Douglas County. Do you think they're just misled, or do you think there's something else going on there?
I'm concerned there's something else going on. When you take time and look through all the home rule statutes, there are statutes that say things like the county commissioners can now buy water rights and land with water rights that are not only inside Douglas County, but outside of Douglas County. It says other things that they can do with water. I've even heard George Teal say, we have some water districts in Douglas County that are struggling. And if we can get this passed, then the commissioners can get involved and combine water districts to help those that are not doing well. That's not the role of county government, because there are already other districts like the Parker Water and Sanitation District that have issued bonds, that have got projects online to buy water. And for the commissioners to think that they can get involved with these other elected boards and force people to come together, that's just not the role of county government. And I'm concerned there's something with water going on. We spent 2 years listening to these proposals, the RWR, to bring water from the San Luis Valley to Douglas County. And I'm not convinced that is a dead issue.
So this is where the restructuring would be for the government, right? They could, now these county commissioners in restructuring as home rule could now be involved in water.
That's right. The home rule statutes give the commissioners the ability to have other roles in water.
All right, talking with Laura Thomas. She's a former Douglas County commissioner. Now, it ended not quite pleasantly between you and the county commissioners. As you look at to the direction they're leading the county, what are your thoughts about the leadership of George Teal, Abe Layden, and Kevin Van Winkle?
I don't want to talk about personalities. What I want to talk about is policy. Yeah. And I am concerned that things are being done to the citizens instead of with the citizens. I remember the night in 2016 when I found out I had won the race for county commissioner. And it's a feeling that was just unbelievable. And I felt that I had been charged with really listening and representing the public and handling problems and doing things that they wanted done. It was representative government. And I'm not sure that I can say that I see representative government going on. I see this home rule thing being shoved down our throats with no discussion ahead of time.
Interesting. Let's talk about your next steps. You're looking at seeking a seat on the Metro District Board, right?
Yes, the Highlands Ranch Metro District is divided into 7 districts. 4 of those seats are up for election on May 6th. The Republican who held that seat, Dave Simonson, has done a good job for a long time. I called Dave to see if he was going to run again, and he told me he was not. He asked me if I was interested, and I told him it was important that a conservative who understands government have that seat. And if he was not going to run again, I was thinking about doing it. And Dave said, "You be good, you understand government, I'd support you." And so I threw my hat in the ring.
And there's some mailers coming out about you.
Well, there's a mailer coming out today endorsing me and supporting me for this role. Great. And, there have been, let's see, this is number 22 of the nasty anonymous postcards that are sent out by cowards, just, with a bunch of lies and crap about me.
Yeah. So you're running for Metro District. You want to continue to be involved. Let's go through your history in Douglas County. You were coroner for how many years?
I was the coroner for 4 years from 2011 to 2015.
And then in the role of county commissioner from 2016 to 2024.
I was sworn in 2017, and I left in 2024, yes.
Okay. And then now Metro District. Why is it important for you to continue to want to serve?
I started off my life of public service with the Colorado State Patrol. I was a dispatcher, and then I was actually a state trooper in Douglas County as Highlands Ranch was just beginning to be built in 1984. So I have watched Douglas County grow. I've been a resident for 33 years. I love this county. It has got such amazing opportunities to live, work, and play. And I understand how government works. I understand the community association, the Metro District, county government, and I want to continue serving my public.
Yeah. So why do you think Douglas County's changed so much? I mean, it's gone on like a 20-point swing. When I first moved back here, was born and raised here, and then moved back in 2012, I ran coalitions for the Romney operation here. And the whole strategy was the big battles are going to be in Jeffco and Arapahoe, and we'll bank our votes in Douglas. And in fact, Romney won Douglas County by 20 points. During our last statewide election, Heidi Ganahl won by less than 1 percentage point. That's a 20-point shift in Douglas County. What happened?
Well, I think that Douglas County was the fastest growing county in the country for years. And it's beautiful. And a lot of people moved here. There was a great school district. What I found really surprising, as you know, I ran for House District 43 last year because we had lost that seat to Robert Marshall, a Democrat. I had strong name recognition. I did not win the primary. There was over $300,000 spent against me in the primary. But when I crunched the data in the general election in November, Lauren Boebert did not win a single precinct of the 50 in House District 43. Donald Trump only won 6 of the 50 precincts. And so the demographics are changing in the county. But I still think it's possible for a Republican to appeal to the voters in Highlands Ranch. I get emails from people that are Democrats and unaffiliated, and they say, I support you because you look at the issues, you want to govern for all, and I have an email that says you're just not a wingnut.
So that's the strategy to get back, you think, kind of to try to appeal to the broad bases and not quite be as conservative?
Well, I think it's how we package the message. Yeah. I went to the Parker Conservative meeting last Wednesday night. This is the meeting where all 3 commissioners were at that was not posted in advance. And George Teal said, we could put in our charter that in the Republican primary, only Republicans can vote. Well, In House District 43, 29% of the voters are Republican. Over 40% are unaffiliated. So if we tell the unaffiliated, we don't care what you think, we don't want you to be involved in our politics, they're not going to be involved in our politics. And we can't appeal to them, and we can't govern. And if we can't win, we can't govern.
We're talking with Laura Thomas. She's a former Douglas County Commissioner. Phone lines are open. If you'd like to give us a call, 303-696-1971, or text us on the Dan Caplis Law text line, 720-819-5115. On Friday, George Teal was in studio saying that home rule would allow Douglas County a lot of flexibility to push back against the leftist agenda coming from the Colorado State Capitol. Laura Thomas saying no. In fact, all it will do is restrict to governmental structure. We won't be able to do that. We'll get into this and more. You're listening to The Jeff and Bill Show.
This is Denver's Talk Leader, News Talk 710 KNUS.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. Laura Thomas is in studio. Laura Thomas is a former Douglas County Commissioner. She's responding because George Teal was in studio on Friday. George Teal, along with Abe Layden and Kevin Van Winkle, those are the county commissioners in Colorado, in Douglas County, saying, no, we can become a home rule county and open up a lot of options to push back against the radical leftist agenda that the state is pushing on us. We could strengthen Second Amendment rights. We could empower our sheriff to work with ICE in response to the effort by the state to become a sanctuary state. So, sounds good, but Laura Thomas saying that's really not an option. In fact, home rule, limited and restricted by the state constitution, is really just to structural issues within the county. So we'll talk about that. We also have some phone calls about water in Douglas County. And in fact, Laura Thomas saying that maybe the reason the county commissioners really want to do this is give them more power over water decisions, which there was that effort to bring water up from the San Luis Valley. Is that what it was? San Luis Valley? And that would cost the county a lot of money. Is that an option? Let's go to Jim in Denver. Jim, you're on the Jeff and Bill Show with Laura Thomas.
Yeah, good morning.
Yeah, hey, thanks for taking my call. Hey, I hear this stuff talked about. I'm a third generation native, okay? My grandfather was born here in 1884. And I'm watching this state be destroyed by the politicians and the bureaucrats in this state. None of them have any foresight, none whatsoever. Oh, they got these 25-year plans and whatnot. But, when it comes to the water, I swear to God, I don't know these. I can't think of what they call these companies that they hire that do their research for them and all this stuff. But they're nothing but yes men for the politicians, and. I live in Arapahoe County, and, Arapahoe County is growing like a weed out here on the Eastern Plains. Yeah. And I've seen all the farmland disappear up there along Highway 85 going up towards Greeley because of growth. They all act like there's an ocean underneath this dirt.
Well, Jim, that's a good question.
It's not funny.
Yeah,
it's serious.
Believe me, I've seen that, and I know it out in Elbert County, some of the battles we're having. I want to ask Laura this. You sat as a county commissioner 2 terms. You dealt with the water stuff. Give us some insight into the water challenges that Douglas County is facing.
Well, I think it's important to understand that Douglas County government has no customers. We're not a water provider. There are several really good, large water providers in Douglas County. It used to be Centennial Water. It's now Highlands Ranch Water. There's Parker Water. There's Castle Rock Water. And there is a coalition of all these water providers in Douglas County that's run by Lisa Darling. And they all come together and they work together. So I've met with Lisa, and Lisa assures me that all of these water providers have got portfolios. They are managing their water well, and they are working on conservation in Douglas County.
No, that's a joke. That's a joke. You guys have a great big dam. And I just up over there, just a little bit to the south of Parker over there that they built. A huge dam reservoir. Where are they getting the water to fill that reservoir? They want to steal all this water. They want to steal we call it buying. They're buying all this water just like they are out here in Bennett. That town Bennett is growing like a weed out here. And they outgrew their well for their aquifers. So they had to go a little bit further north of town up there and buy the water rights from a farmer up there for his aquifer rights.
Laura, do you want to respond to what the dam is doing out there in Parker? That's the which dam?
It's Reuter Hess.
Reuter Hess
can hold 75,000 acre-feet of water. It's being filled by water coming in from Cherry Creek, and there's also a water project with the Platte Valley up in the northeast corner of the state. It's a great plan, and it will come to fruition.
All right, Jim, thanks. I got to get to Corey Nelson has called in. Now, Corey, Laura Thomas is saying that a charter is really only restricted to the structure of the county government and cannot get into things like strengthening the Second Amendment or allowing the sheriff to work with ICE, those types of things. Corey, your thoughts on this? Because I know you were interested on being on the commission for the charter.
Sure. Good morning. This is something I didn't think I'd ever would say. Laura is right about a lot on this issue. The Constitution of the state of Colorado, Article 14, clearly states that the home rule power allows the county to establish the, quote, organization and structure of county government, unquote. So it's not as expansive as home rule municipalities, which authorities under Article 20. However, I think the truth really kind of lies somewhere in between, because in drafting the charter correctly, and the way I would like to see it drafted, in developing the organization and structure of, for example, the sheriff's office, you could delineate what that function of the sheriff's office is, including things like working and cooperating with federal investigators, for example. So I think there's ways, if you have the right people there to draft the right words and language in the charter, I think you can meet those goals. Now, what's clearly going to happen if you do that, the state may sue the county over this issue and may go to court. Fine, let the court go. But until you're a home rule county, you really don't have that capacity, right? So I'm definitely in favor of the charter. It's just a question of getting the right language in there. So it's not I think as expansive as people like George Shield may have wanted it to believe that it is. But I think if you have the right language in the charter, you can get a lot more progress down the road.
Laura Thomas, your response.
Well, I've known Corey for a long time. He actually was a prosecutor in Denver, so he understands municipal home rule. So he understands it's different than county home rule. There was a court case, a Supreme Court case that was just decided in February of this year against the Weld County Commissioners, because they felt they could draw the boundary lines for their commissioner districts the way they wanted to because they're home rule. And the Colorado Supreme Court ruled against Weld County, and this is what they said. Although home rule counties enjoy autonomy in determining their internal organization, they remain bound to perform mandatory functions prescribed by state law. State law is very clear that the sheriff's office cannot work with ICE. So I don't know how you can make these two things say they work, because they do not. I wish they did. So I was a state trooper for years. I had to know exactly what the language is before I took someone's freedom away from them and put them in jail. And that is the lens that I use when I look at legal words.
So, Corey, what Laura's brought up is that this is going to be a lot of money on an election that's really not going to provide a lot of freedom for the county. What are your thoughts?
Well, the election's going to happen anyway, right? We're going to have a ballot issue. The ballot's that could be a special election. But she has a point that the Weld County case, which is, I've actually read and reviewed. She's right about the language of that, but I still think there's an argument to be made. But you can't get in front of a judge or in a court to make that determination unless you create the home rule in the first place. I think her concerns are valid, and I think, again, it comes down to the language of the charter. I still think when you're talking about the organization and structure, you're talking about two aspects of what government at the county level can do. One is permissive functions, where the state legislature grants you the permission to do things, but those authorized by statute. And the Colorado Constitution provides some authority for law enforcement. I think in the county charter, I think you can set up the charter, for example, in the sheriff's department, to the function. What's the function of the sheriff? I think you can delineate that and present the best picture possible, the best argument possible of why we should be able to do things in Douglas County the way that Douglas County wants them to do. I think unless you take this effort, you're never going to get there. I think it's worth
Laura, want to do a final response to that?
Let me just say that in what Corey has said tells me that what the commissioner should have done is had a long discussion so the citizens had the opportunity to debate and resolve the questions that Corey and I are both raising before it went to the ballot.
All right, Corey, I really appreciate the call. We're up against a break.
Yes,
We'll
thank
continue with Laura Thomas, former Douglas County Commissioner, on whether or not Douglas County should be a home rule county. You're listening to The Jeff and Bill Show.
This is Denver's Talk Leader, News Talk 710 KNUS.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. So Friday, George Teal was on our station talking about how great becoming a home rule county would be for Douglas County. Talked with Laura Thomas over the weekend. She said, no, this is not necessarily a good thing for Douglas County. It's going to cost a lot of money, and it's not going to achieve maybe what's being promised. So I said, well, come on, because we like debate on this show. Billy and I debate the color of the sky. It's part of what we do here.
Oh, yeah.
So, Laura, it seems like the train's left the station with regards to the special election at this point. I think that's happening.
That's
so
right.
What can people do, from your perspective, should they do about becoming a home rule county?
I have been putting information, the facts about all of this on social media, and more people are getting engaged in this topic. What people need to understand is that they are being sold a bill of goods. What they are being told is going to happen cannot happen. So on that ballot on June 24th, people need to vote no, we do not want to become a home rule county. And they need to encourage their neighbors, tell their neighbors. Why? I have a newsletter. They can go to laura@laurathomas.org. They can subscribe to my newsletter. I put it out a couple times a week, and I put in facts. Everything I put has a link that supports what I say. It's not innuendo, it's fact.
All right. So June 24th is the special election. I'm sure there'll be a lot of debate between now and then. But Laura Thomas, taking time to come on the Jeff and Bill Show.
Yes,
Thanks
thank you
for
so much
joining us.
It was my pleasure to be with you. And just remember, vote no on home rule.
Vote no on home rule from Laura Thomas. Vote yes on home rule from George Teal. My, oh, my. They all come by the Jeff and Bill Show, Billy.
Yeah, it's really nice.
We all love it.
And I think that's a good question that Laura Thomas has raised. The idea is, does it accomplish what they think
being
it
promised.
will? Yeah, there are some questions about whether or not it will and can it and cannot accomplish. And I think that's kind of the bottom line, is that for the voters out there, if they say that home rule can accomplish X, can it? Go and ask the questions.
Yeah.
Go and do the research and listen to what Laura's saying, listen to what George is saying, and figure out, and what Corey Nelson was saying. Can it accomplish the bill of goods that they say it can by becoming home rule? And it's different when you're a municipality, easy for me to say, versus county. And so there are some different rules that kick in there, and maybe being a home rule county doesn't give you all the freedom that you think it may. So, yeah, some words of wisdom. I appreciate Laura's time this morning. This has been good.
Laura, give them the website again.
My email, I don't have a website anymore,
your
but they can subscribe to Laura Thomas. It's laura@laurathomas.org, and it's LORA.
Laura@laurathomas.org. If you want to get her mailer there, she's also running for Metro District, so you can learn more about that. Thank you again for joining us.
Yes, thank you.
We'll continue. Billy and I are going to talk Trump, trade, and tariffs next. You're listening to Jeff and Bill.
This is Denver's Talk Leader, News Talk 710 KNUS.
It is 9 a.m. in the Mile High City on this Monday, April 7th, 2025. Good morning, Denver, Colorado. You've tuned into the Jeff and Bill Show, News Talk 710 KNUS. I'm your co-host, Jeff Hunt, along with Bill Thorpe, bringing you the freshest insights and hottest takes as on the right, left, and center. We've got an entire hour planned, diving into Trump and tariffs because things are all over the place today in the stock market. Does Trump really believe what he says about these reciprocal tariffs? Are they permanent? Or is this just a negotiation tactic? Is he going to stay committed? What did this conversation with Vietnam have to do with all of this, and insight into what Trump is thinking? Is he reforming the American economy? Is this the reindustrialization of America? So just buckle up. This is the way things are always going to go. Or is he willing to negotiate on these tariffs? That's what I want to get into, and how much is it affecting your portfolio? Phone lines are open, 303-696-1971, or text us on the Dan Caplis Law text line at 720-819-5115. But now it's time for Blake Olson.
Blake Olson.
Blake Olson, news and comment.
Hey, good morning. 43 and sunny in Denver, expecting a high of 66 today. The 7-10 5-day forecast is coming up. Our top story, stocks are falling this morning on Wall Street for a third straight session. Global tariffs were rolled out last week, and a lot of people have lost their minds. Marco Rubio on Sunday.
No, their economies are not crashing. Their markets are reacting to a dramatic change in the global order in terms of trade. And so what happens is pretty straightforward. If you're a company and you make a bunch of your products in China, and all of a sudden shareholders or people that play the stock market realize that it's going to cost a lot more to produce in China, your stock is going to go down. But ultimately, the markets, as long as they know what the rules are going to be moving forward, and as long as that's set and you can sustain where you're going to be, the markets will adjust. Businesses around the world, including in trade and global trade, they just need to know what the rules are. Once they know what the rules are, they will adjust to those rules.
And DJT is encouraged.
I've spoken to many countries. They all want to do, just so you understand the power of what I'm doing, every country is calling and being very solicitous of us. Very, very nice. They're being very nice. and we have to be able to justify. This is not sustainable. The United States can't lose $1.9 trillion on trade. We can't do that and also spend a lot of money on NATO in order to protect European nations. We cover them with military, then we lose money on trade. The whole thing is crazy.
Yes, it is. And wow, look at this. Gateway Pundit says it's World War G. Trump's tariffs aren't just economics. They're America's frontline defense in the globalist communist hybrid war. Yes. And the Independent reporting that the freak show Keir Starmer of the UK to declare the end of globalization. That is great news. And after 4 years of yelling about it and screaming from the mountaintops about this, conservatives, now the mainstream media admitting that there's child trafficking going on. Nice job by the Biden administration, Alejandro Mayorkas and Kamala Khan.
What happened here is we welcome these children in here, and that sponsor families, some of the rules were changed. They don't need to be a parent or an uncle or anything. It could be anybody. And some of the traffickers suggested the sponsor, and the New York Times article says there's homes in Florida and Texas with 15 to 20 kids all sleeping on the floor, not in school, and 15 passenger vans are picking up kids, 15 at a time, and they're cleaning pig slaughterhouses and doing the whole night shift. And we're allowing this all to happen under our noses here in the greatest country of the world, the United States.
Thank God it's being exposed. Former Douglas County Commissioner Laura Thomas on the show this morning, last hour. She says a home rule county is not a good idea for Douglas County.
It's Article 14 of the state constitution that talks about home rule. And what it says is that a home rule county has the power to adopt a home rule charter establishing the organization and structure of county government. But the county home rule does not allow commissioners to opt out of state laws that we don't like. And that's an important thing that people need to understand, because when we talked about this in 2022, it was really clear. We could do things like extend term limits. We could increase salaries for elected officials. We could, like in Weld County, they do not elect a coroner or the treasurer. They are appointed. It's structural things that a home rule county can do. A home rule county is very different from a home rule municipality.
And State Rep Brandy Bradley also on with Jeff and Billy this morning. What a great way to spend your Sunday. Listening to the death cult left in this state just try to lead us into hell and cram down 4 evil bills, including more prohibition laws. Republicans just want to track the data.
They don't want any of that on the public records. They don't want to know how many are done. They don't want to know how much the state is spending on them. We have federal funds, and if those federal funds are used for anything other than the Hyde Amendment, we're going to be in big trouble as a state. And so there's a lot of transparency that we try to put into this, what we think is a very bad bill, and they didn't accept any of those amendments.
No, the Democrats did not. And when you don't fear God, you don't fear anything. The left will try to pass anything and everything. The Dodgers will be at the White House today to celebrate last year's World Series victory. The team will meet with DJT before taking on the Nationals later tonight. Team president Stan Kasten, told the Los Angeles Times the decision was made by the players to make the visit. Oh, my gosh, God forbid they're going to go see the president. What are those Southern California lefties going to do? They never said that when Biden or Obama was in office. Remember that? No, they don't talk about the teams going to the White House. Only when DJT is there.
I don't get. I don't get the controversy about that. If Jared Polis invited me to lunch, I'd go to lunch. Jason Crow, let's go have some lunch.
Exactly. That's the mainstream media. It's the left, and he's evil.
Meeting with Trump.
Right. Even though the majority of Americans support him, no, they're gonna. Oh my God, they're gonna go meet with Trump.
How dare you have a good time with somebody you disagree with?
Yeah, right, exactly.
That's my open invitation to Jason Crow. Let's go drink some whiskey, man.
Yeah, exactly.
We'll have fun. We'll have some fun.
Truth. You don't have anything to hide.
I ran into Mikey Johnston at the congressional hearing. We talked belt buckles.
Yeah, that's right. You sure did. I mean, as much as I can't stand Biden or Obama, if I'm a player or a coach, I'm going.
Yeah, why not?
Absolutely. I'm going to shake their hands and say, you know what? You may want to think about becoming a conservative.
That's right.
God bless America. And then, talk to them about Jesus, man. I mean, whatever. Go to the freaking White House. It's ridiculous.
All right, who do you think can handle their whiskey better, me or Jason Crow?
Man, you're kind of, you're I don't know. Both of you guys probably weigh about the same, right?
Yeah, that's right.
I don't know, man. You're
150 pounds.
Dude. How much do you weigh?
155.
Oh, my goodness.
I was a runner. I ran in college.
Man, that's right. You're a cross country.
And then I did ultra marathons. I ran 50. I ran 74 miles in one day once.
Gee, are you kidding me? You guys are crazy. Those stickers? I just bought one. Those stickers that what do they say, 13.1 or whatever the crap on. Okay, I got one the other day, 0.0. It's pretty cool. I said, hey, I like that one. I'm going to buy that. I haven't put it on my truck yet, but I may.
So who do you think can handle it better, me or Jason Crow?
I'd say you. I
think we should test it
out. My money's on you. I think we should have a contest. Absolutely.
Yeah.
How much does that dude weigh?
Enough to get quite rattled during January 6th.
There you go. Exactly. That's the truth. All right, let's hear this.
Trying to find a seam and know that, hey, we're going to try to force it to him if he's open.
Here is Ovechkin. Shoots. He scores! He scores! Number 895!
Man, that was a big deal yesterday. That is a big deal. Alex Ovechkin still playing and breaks Wayne Gretzky's record, the great one, on Sunday, 895. And FBI Director Kash Patel was sitting next to Gretzky at the game. It's pretty cool. The Avalanche play host to the Golden Knights tomorrow. The Rockies back at home, and they'll be back in action tomorrow. They win game number 2 of the season, 12-5 over the A's on Sunday. Nuggets fall to the Pacers 125-120. National championship tonight. Houston Cougars and the Florida Gators. UConn wins the women's championship for the 12th time. 41 in Aurora, 39 in Golden, 43 in Denver. Jeff and Billy continue. Blake Olson, News Talk 710 KNUS.
Back to mild spring weather for Denver in the Front Range this week. Not much going to be happening. We'll be mid-60s today, a mix of high clouds and sun, near 40 tonight, all the way to the lower 70s, cloudy and breezy Tuesday, upper 60s, breezy Wednesday, 60s Thursday, back to the 70s for Friday and into the weekend. Weather sponsored by Colorado's Best Roofing, reminding you to protect your home from the harsh Colorado weather and schedule your free no-obligation roof inspection today at roofingcolorado.com. That's roofingcolorado.com. Meteorologist Don Day in the 710 KNUS Weather Center.
So text messages are coming in. What was I running 74 miles for? I was trying to do the Leadville 100 twice, and I got to about the same spot, and my lower back gave out at around 74 miles. I just couldn't finish. And the brutal thing about the Leadville 100 is the time. It's actually a very fast race to try to run 100 miles, and then just couldn't do it. Just couldn't do it. Lower back was not strong enough. Maybe if I had gone to Colorado Wound Care, Bill, it would have all worked out better.
Yes, perhaps it would have worked out a little bit better for you. And here we want to talk about Colorado Wound Care Associates of Colorado. Visit them at coloradowound.com, coloradowound.com. Why? Well, if someone in your family or yourself is dealing with a slow-healing cut, a diabetic ulcer, a pressure sore, that is a little deal that can turn into a very big deal. If you don't fix the problem just becomes worse. Putting that electrical tape over the check engine light on the car, yeah, that doesn't help. You ignore it for a while, but it just means you're going to pay more later. And that's exactly what happens when you ignore those chronic, slow-healing cuts and wounds. Had the experience in my own life with my aunt who had a slow-healing wound on her leg. The facility she was dealing with just maintained it, which meant leaving it open and cleaning it every so often. So that meant the dirt, germs, and bacteria could enter her body at any time she came in contact with them. That torn skin and tissue is the perfect place for those dirt, germs, and bacteria to get access to your internal organs and your blood system. That's what happened to her. She contracted MRSA because they were just maintaining the wound. It led to some amputations and some lengthy hospital stays. So recently, when my youngest had some surgery and the wound wasn't healing properly, we did visit the surgeon a couple of times, but then he mentioned that word. We're going to maintain the wound. Nope, doc. No, we aren't. Nope. Literally 24 hours within that final meeting with him, I was on the phone with Wound Care Associates of Colorado. I reached out to them at coloradowound.com, coloradowound.com, to set up a treatment for my youngest. Now, here's the cool part. This is why you want to reach out to Wound Care Associates of Colorado. They're different than anybody else in the game. I told you earlier about my aunt and how they were just going to maintain her wound. That is not what Wound Care Associates of Colorado is going to do for you or your loved ones. They promote faster healing. They know that when that skin and tissue heals, less chance of it becoming infected. Yeah, and that doesn't take a genius to know that, but so many other wound care facilities don't look at doing that. They don't want to make sure that the dirt, germs, and bacteria stays out of your body or your loved ones' bodies. They'll deal with that later on. Yeah, as long as the check clears. Don't go with those. Go with Wound Care Associates of Colorado because they will promote faster healing, but here's the really cool part. They do it house call style. Yes, you get the concierge service without the concierge price, meaning they come to your location. You don't have to worry about taking time off of work and going to their location and then sitting down in the office and waiting in the waiting room and going to the doctor. None of that. They come to you where you are at your convenience. This is a game changer for anybody that's in a retirement community or any sort of assisted living facility. You don't have to worry about getting them transportation to the doctor's office because the Wound Care Associates of Colorado certified nurse practitioner comes to your location. It is personalized service with a personalized treatment plan that promotes faster healing. There's nobody else in Colorado coming even close to this level of service. If someone in your family is dealing with a slow healing cut, diabetic ulcer, pressure sore, do what I did. Contact Wound Care Associates of Colorado. They're the best in the business going here in Colorado. Don't mess around with the others. ColoradoWound.com. ColoradoWound.com. I trusted them with my family. You can trust them with yours. ColoradoWound.com. ColoradoWound.com. Contact them today. And when you do, tell them you heard about them here on the Jeff and Bill Show because it helps us out.
That's great to hear, Bill. All right, Bill, I got a question for you.
Yes. The doctor said, though, wound care said if I stop scratching it, the wound would go away.
Quiet today, and everybody always likes the Bill debate.
No, they don't.
Yes, they do. I literally get text messages when our guests come on. They're like, Bill wasn't as feisty as I was hoping. All right, so the stock market's all over the place today. It actually rallied for a bit. Now it's back down. Okay. So editorial in the weekend by the editorial board in the Wall Street Journal just called Trump's bluff on reciprocal tariffs, that he's not committed to running these all the way through, and the evidence they used was his conversation with Vietnam, where he says, just had a very productive call with Tao Lam, General Secretary of the Communist Party of Vietnam, who told me that Vietnam wants to cut their tariffs down to zero if they're able to make an agreement with the U.S. I thanked him on behalf of our country and said, I look forward to a meeting in the near future. So are the tariffs here to stay? And look, I understand that Donald Trump needs to be able to negotiate with countries. That's partly why I disagreed with Rand Paul's assessment that tariffs were just taxes. I think they're a form of foreign policy engagement between the United States and other countries. But my question to you, Bill, should Trump negotiate on these tariffs? If a country like Vietnam is willing to go to zero, if Europe's willing to go to zero, and Trump goes, all right, zero tariffs, should he? Or should he go, I'm not reducing tariffs until we have reindustrialized the United States. My goal, jobs, manufacturing, back in this country. Until they are, tariffs are up. Your thoughts, sir?
Yeah, this is the problem in Trump's premise on the tariffs, which again has changed a number of times, whether it's about illegal immigration or fentanyl or not access to markets. And he's got this floating list of reasons behind his tariffs, despite the fact that he loves the word. Says it's the most beautiful word in the English language. The problem that he has is the Vietnam example, that if tariffs are such a good idea, then when someone calls and offers to lower them to zero, why would you do that? Because the premise of the tariff is that free trade's a bad idea, unless it is simply a negotiating tactic, which is really what I think it is for him at the core, negotiating tactic. But he's got a little bit of a problem with that as far as selling it to people. Is do these other countries take him seriously as far as an honest negotiator? And what is going to loom in the back of everybody's mind is the USMCA. That at the last Trump term, he signed what he said was the bestest deal ever between America, Canada, and U.S. And now, 4 years later, somehow we're being taken advantage of by Mexico and Canada under the exact trade agreement that Trump signed. That's a weird one to posit, to say this is the reason why this happens. I personally think part of the reason that he's doing these tariffs is because this scratches the authoritarian itch inside of his brain, inside of his ego. He likes the idea of patronage. He likes the idea of sitting in the White House or sitting on a large throne and having the leaders of other countries come to him and ask him to do things. And yes, sir, how? Because what does he tout? Oh, look at all of the countries that are calling us now. That's part of his goal. He likes that. When he was out of power, he would receive foreign dignitaries at Mar-a-Lago and even produce press releases using a presidential seal in which he was not entitled to at the time. He likes this type of pomp and circumstance. This is a big deal for him. The idea of other foreign leaders calling him and asking him for favors, he loves that. that scratches that part of his ego. So I think that's part of this, is that he wants them to come to him for X, Y, and Z. And the way he made that happen was through the tariffs, because he could have just picked up the phone and said, hi, we need to do this and do this. But the real question you have to ask is, if they're going down to zero, if Vietnam says, yes, we'll go down, we'll bring the tariffs down to zero, are tariffs really doing what he says they are? Because if we have zero tariffs and we negotiate that with Vietnam, none of those manufacturing companies are coming back. None of them come back. He's not going to accomplish his goal. He has to decide. He has to decide whether he's going to use the tariffs to pay down the debt and bring massive amounts of money in, or it's going to bring manufacturing in. It can't do both. It either will bring manufacturing back, or the tariffs will bring massive money into the country. But it's not bringing money in the country anyway, because U.S. consumers
do both,
are.
But,
no, it can't.
But you are advocating. I mein, he's got a choice.
Yeah.
Either negotiate with the countries and bring them down to zero tariffs and go, okay, we're good. You're not jacking up the tariffs on Americans anymore. No trade deficit, that type of thing. Or maintain the tariffs and build manufacturing in America. You would prefer which one?
I would prefer zero tariffs. I would prefer the idea of free trade, because I think free trade is better economically for the world and better economically for the U.S. And the other part is, there are certain manufacturing things that we are never going to bring back. And tariffs have been very inefficient at bringing manufacturing back to a country. Tariffs have been very efficient in a burgeoning economy, protecting local industry, and certain ones, not as universal, but protecting certain industries while they get their feet underneath them and are able to compete on the global market. The idea being that if you're going to start a social media space and you've got to compete with Musk and Zuckerberg and everybody else out there, then it is difficult for you to get that kind of traction. And if you were a country, you could protect your own local social media against the larger social media companies from crushing you. That's the idea behind the tariffs.
If you're a free trade guy, you would just want things to continue to go on as is. The global trade.
The thing is,
we build stuff. Maybe there's national security issues, but so what?
I don't think the status quo is necessarily perfect, but it's better than this trade war that Trump has started. It's more efficient, and the economies of scale function better, and it is better universally, I believe, for the globe than it is to go through this idea of isolationism and protectionism. I think that's a negative overall, not only for America, but also for the globe. And again, there are certain things that are never going to be made here. And the one that I'll put on the table right now is Nike. Nike's never making shoes in America again. It doesn't make any sense. They can't efficiently produce shoes here in order to sell them to the consumer. It just can't be accomplished based on how we pay and based on our factories. They just can't do it. And so what'll happen is either the tariffs will hurt Nike's product here as far as amount of money they can make, or what they'll do is Nike will just go and explore other markets. Nike, because they are a global brand, they will just go ahead and sell to other people, and not to here.
You would have an opportunity to build a shoe company here in America if Nike goes somewhere else.
I know, but again, do you think that Nike is not very good in understanding how to build a shoe efficiently here? And so having something grow like Nike is going to be very, very difficult, especially with manufacturing. It doesn't mean that we can't design it and have some of the ideas come out of here, even some of the components. Right, but full-blown manufacturing of a shoe on the level that Nike but the level that Nike produces, that's nearly impossible inside America. The numbers simply don't work. You wouldn't be able to sell the shoes at a level in which you could maintain that level of manufacturing. It just can't work economically.
All right, so I think in that decision that Trump has to make between maintaining the tariffs to reindustrialize America or negotiate down, get to zero tariffs, and then just go back to global trade, I hope he sticks with the tariffs and reindustrializing America. This is a massive shift, but it's a shift that America needs to go through. We don't build things here. That is a national security issue. We have no manufacturing here. That's a jobs issue. America is a great country, but it's seriously suffering right now, where the only job opportunities out there are consumer-based, so you end up driving for Uber or Amazon. There's no manufacturing left. We don't build things here. That's a national security problem as well. Donald Trump reindustrializing this nation, bringing us forward. Yes, it's risky. Yes, it's groundbreaking. It changes everything. Move forward in that direction. I don't want to see us starting to then negotiate one-offs with countries, getting back down to zero tariffs and all that stuff. It's got to be about delivering for the American people first. Press forward, President Trump. That's what I'm saying. All right. Prove me wrong. 303-696-1971 or text us on the Dan Caplis Law text line 720-819-5115. I also think it's important, too, for businesses to just know this is where we're going. You need to build here in this country. The tariffs are sticking around. That'll create certainty for these businesses. They'll be able to move forward. You jump back into globalism, back into tariffs, you go back and forth. That's worse for the industry. It's worse for the market. So I'd like to see consistency moving forward, reindustrialize this nation, Donald Trump. Let's go to the phone lines. Joe in Arvada, you're on the Jeff and Bill Show.
Good morning.
Good morning, Jeff, Billy. Billy, if tariffs are so bad, and I'm stealing from Victor Davis Hanson, why do all the other countries have tariffs on us, and those are okay?
I need some specific examples, and the idea is I didn't.
Well,
defend,
let's talk about
Joe,
China,
okay.
or another good one is Germany or Canada. My favorite, Canada.
Yeah.
Why do we have all these tariffs imposed on us, and that's okay, but we can't impose tariffs on them?
But we do, Joe. We do impose tariffs on them, and lots of them. Huge numbers of tariffs. If you talk to an importer here in the country, they will tell you that their import list is the size of several phone books, that we take the old yellow pages and stack several on top of each other, that it is an enormous list of tariffs that we have. We already have them. So we already have them.
Okay, then look at China's tariffs on us as opposed to our new tariffs on them. What is now happening?
Well, China's going to import less of our stuff. They're going to send less stuff here. Yeah. Okay.
That's not the question. You're not answering the question.
What are you asking?
Why is their tariffs high, and our tariffs were, previous to Donald Trump, virtually nothing?
I'm not certain they were necessarily virtually nothing, and nor are the tariffs on the Chinese goods universal. But then again, even if they did have high tariffs on the Chinese goods, it would be the Chinese that would pay that higher price. So but again, they were trying to protect some of their internal manufacturing and internal products, and that's fine. And we do the same thing here. We have certain siloed tariffs that protect certain industries, and that's fine. But the better thing is lower tariffs and global trade.
No.
Yes. Oh, it's much better.
What is better is reciprocal trade. But here, let me just propose something
Joe,
to
hang on
you.
a sec. Wait, how do you define reciprocal? Joe, wait. I need to understand what you mean by reciprocal trade. What do you mean by that functionally?
President Trump nailed it today, by the way, when he said that there is a $1 trillion trade imbalance from going from China to the United States per year. So $1 trillion more of goods are imported. Yet you're saying that it's okay. That's okay, but it's not okay. If you look in Middle America, look at what happened to our country during this buildup of this trade imbalance. It destroyed our country. That's your mistake.
No, we got stuff. We got stuff in exchange for it. Yes, we did.
We got stuff.
Yes, we have stuff, and we were able to buy stuff that was less expensive.
We got destroyed.
Yes. No, we got stuff.
Is what happened.
No, we didn't get destroyed at all.
Yeah, everybody has a basement full of plastic garbage.
But then
that's
again,
what happened.
But the U.S. is still the leading economy on the planet. It still is. So it didn't destroy it.
It's about to become. the leading economy on the planet.
No, Joe,
That's
it is.
where
Especially
you're wrong.
No, not at all. But we're the leading economy on the planet, and that we were destroyed. Well, hang on.
China is being destroyed as we speak.
Okay. Joe, okay, fine. We'll say China's the leading economy. The number 2 one would be U.S., okay? That's at least reasonable playing in your ground. I'm just going to your playground right now and playing where you are. That's all I'm doing right now. And you're telling me...
not.
Oh, my God.
That's not what I'm saying.
This is ridiculous. That's
you're
exactly
putting
what you're
words
saying.
into my mouth. We are the number 1 consumer on the planet. That's all we are, Billy. The number 1 consumer. We don't make hardly anything.
But it's not a bad deal. Being the number 1 consumer isn't a bad thing.
It does have trade-offs,
yes,
though.
it is.
It's not.
COVID proved to us that when we don't make anything, the other world globalists have control of everything. We control nothing.
But, I mean, and Joe, to your point...
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Joe, to your point, and Bill, we have become an entirely consumer-oriented economy, and there are trade-offs to that. Our economic mobility has stalled. We have more people dependent on the government than at any point. Those great manufacturing jobs are gone. People are more depressed than they've ever been in this country. But we get cheap avocados and cheap TVs.
Help me understand how you're getting to the your conclusions based on the trade imbalance. How
Billy,
are you getting there?
You don't understand it because you do high-tech production of a radio station, but a steel worker could explain it to you very easily.
That's odd, Joe, because I have one of my best friends out of college is a steel worker, and we've talked about it.
Where did he go to work?
He works at the steel mill in Pueblo, but that's okay. But still.
Yeah, with about 20 other people.
Again, Joe, your issue was go talk to a steel worker. I just did. I have. And so we talked about it.
There were hundreds of thousands of them before China.
Okay. So you want to pay more for steel? Because the idea of global trade is the idea.
No, what is happening, Billy, is
you want to pay more for your stuff.
The world economy is being rebalanced if we don't have 13 traitor senators that try to overthrow Donald Trump.
So Joe, I don't understand. You're telling me the world economy is going to be rebalanced, but we're already the largest consumers. So we're going to consume less? I don't understand. I don't understand what this rebalance is about.
It's reorienting, away from consumerism
and the result
towards
is what?
Manufacturing.
But we're not going to consume the stuff anymore?
Not at the same rate.
The U.S. is going to consume less. Oh,
right.
So the U.S. is going to consume less. Why? Why would we consume less?
It's going to consume differently.
No, more or less? Are we going to become this? Are we still the largest?
It's going to consume differently.
No.
But you might not get cheap. You might not get cheap avocados the same way.
Wait, but hold on. So will the stuff be less or more expensive?
It'll probably be more expensive.
Okay, is that going to be more or less consumerism?
It'll change.
It'll be less. Stop. Don't dance around this.
But
don't
so
dance
in
around
your
this.
equation,
Higher prices is lower consumerism.
In your equation, everything remains the same. Just the things we buy is going to get more expensive without understanding how the economy is going to improve because we have manufacturing back here, jobs here, money back here, GDP here. Yes, it may cost things that are more expensive, but you're also going to have changes in economy on the other side of the equation.
But jobs are being replaced in manufacturing and automation.
Not all of
based
them.
on
Not all of them.
But if you're going to bring it back
and
to the
build
U.S.,
build those factories here. Who's going to build the robots? Other robots?
Yes, actually, yes.
No,
that's what happens.
People are going to build these.
No, robots. No,
not all
robots will build other robots.
Yes,
robots.
All right,
and that's
we got to
you can't do it here, and you can't. And again, you're not building shoes here. You're not coming back here. Nike's not coming back and building shoes.
What strikes me is just how defeatist the other side is, and when
not
you just go,
realist.
This is the way it is. You're always everything's going to be manufactured in other places. That's the way America's going to be moving forward.
No, that's the way America's going to be if you want to be able to afford your Nikes. If not, if you want to pay $500 for your Jordans Plus, go right ahead.
Yeah, see, I disagree. I think you're totally dismissing the other side of the equation, which is now you have jobs and manufacturing happening back here. All right, we'll continue. We've got phone calls, lots of them, lots of text messages. We knew this was going to be a spicy debate. I want to talk to you real quick about our friends at the Colorado Farm Bureau. Whether you pulled out your skis or snowmobiles this last winter, it was a great year for winter fun, but the snow means even more to Colorado agriculture. And I want you to know that our state farmers and ranchers are doing their part to protect our future water resources. The people of Colorado agriculture always have conservation, efficiency, and reuse top of mind when it comes to water use. As the metro area continues to grow, Colorado Farm Bureau leads talks with state policymakers about preserving water for all areas of the state as pressure on the water system grows. It's going to take all of us to find a solution. My friends at the Colorado Farm Bureau are leaders in water conservation and policy. They understand how to balance water for crops and water for families, and they're doing more with less. You can do your part. I recommend you join and become a member today. Go to coloradofarmbureau.com. That's coloradofarmbureau.com to join them today. All right. We got lots coming up. You're listening to The Jeff and Bill Show.
This is Denver's Talk Leader, News Talk 710 KNUS.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. Let's get to these phone lines because it is hot, jam-packed here on the Jeff and Bill Show. Should Trump maintain his tariffs to reindustrialize America or negotiate them down to zero with each country? Let's go to Jim and Sterling. Good morning, Jim. You're on the Jeff and Bill Show.
Morning.
Good morning, you guys. Hey, Bill, have you ever sown a seed?
You mean like planted them?
He does have 4 children.
Hello? Yeah.
Hello? I'm not.
Have you ever planted a seed?
Yes, both in large fields and in backyards.
Okay, well, that's what we need to do to get our country back in line. And that's what Trump is trying to do here. We need to lift all the regulations and rules and regulations because we have got so many rules and regulations. It's hard. It's so everybody, when you start a company, you're out for a profit margin. And now that we got so many rules and regulations, it's harder for a company to start here. That's why Nikes are built overseas, because they don't have any rules and regulations. Now, if our emissions, if you want to start world emissions, well, then that would be a whole different concept. But that's why these companies build stuff over there, because they don't have all the rules and regulations that we have here in the States to build stuff.
I disagree, because there are rules and regulations when you build in China and Vietnam, Cambodia. There are rules and regulations there. They're different, but there are rules.
Not as high as they are here.
Depends. Depends on what you mean by high.
No.
Wait, Jim.
Point across the board.
No, Jim.
They are not as
Jim,
strong as they are
Jim,
here.
hang on a sec. Depends on how you define high. I would say that a rule and regulation that you have to turn over much of your intellectual property to the Chinese government when building there is somewhat of a high rule.
You know, the environmental restrictions are a lot higher, too.
But the issue being is that it depends on how we are judging high. Yes, environmental restrictions are higher here than they are in China, but the transfer of intellectual power is much higher in China than it is compared to here.
Okay, if
That's
it was
different,
cheaper
man.
for them, by the time they ship a Nike shoe clear to here from China, if they built it right here in Kansas, okay, then tell me how they wouldn't have to pay for all the shipping. So therefore, they're building it over there and still paying for all the shipping.
Yeah, what does that tell you, Jim? What does that tell you?
That tells me that they can build it cheaper over there with slave labor or whatever they do, and then build the product cheaper. They don't have to pay people insurance. They don't have to pay people any of that stuff. They don't have to deal with emissions and stuff as much as we do in the States. So therefore, if they can build it over there with slave labor and then bring it over here and still make a profit.
Yeah,
Jim,
that's exactly what it means.
Appreciate the call.
And Jim, I appreciate the call, but what you're outlining there is if we would take away environmental regulations, if we would take away rules about insurance, so companies wouldn't provide insurance, they wouldn't have to be worried about anything they're putting into the ground or into the air, and they wouldn't have to provide a living wage for people, then we'd be winners. I disagree. I disagree that the idea of taking off all the regulations now makes us better and makes us more efficient. No. No one would advocate that taking away the health insurance or taking away all but that's what he talked about.
You're jumping from reducing restrictions to taking them all away.
I'm using Jim's example.
But you can definitely reduce some of the regulations.
But I'm using the example of the regulations that he used in his statement. I'm playing in his pool. He said, here are the regulations that are causing it to be too expensive, and we wouldn't take those away. There's no way we would take away those protections. There's no way.
Let's go to Ben in Denver. Good morning, Ben. You're on the Jeff and Bill Show.
Good morning.
Hey, how's it going? Morning, guys. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we got you.
Okay. Yeah, this whole thing that Trump's doing is just absolutely asinine. He's basically sending us towards a recession for no real legitimate logical reason, and it's very frustrating to watch.
But Ben, he said he was going to do tariffs, and he got elected. He talked all about tariffs during the campaign. Now he's been elected, and he's implementing them.
Yeah, and he's doing it in a very, very stupid way. He's not basing it even on anything reciprocal. He's basing it off trade deficits, which don't matter. For example, like one of the countries he has is Lesotho, which he has a 97% tariff on. And do you know why he does that? Because we buy some rare earth metals and diamonds from Lesotho, and they're a pretty poor country, and we can't sell them a whole lot of stuff. So we're charging them a 97% rate because they can't buy anything from us. So, like, a lot of this stuff just isn't well thought out or logical.
Yeah, and the other thing with that, Ben, is the one thing we couldn't do is bring that rare earth mine to the U.S. to manufacture here. You can't pick the mine up and move it here. So functionally, the idea of manufacturing here doesn't work.
Did Lesotho have no tariffs on us, and he's just making it up, or were they tariffing us?
He's doing it based on trade imbalance. He's not doing it based on tariffs. Do they have any tariffs? But hang on. But what Ben is outlining is the math problem the Trump administration has used.
But my question is there any tariffs
It doesn't take into tariffs at all. There's nothing as far as the tariffs in that math problem.
It's tariff and trade imbalance.
No, but the way
it's not.
No, it's not.
That's not
the way
the
the administration did the math equation. Not at all.
They did it based on trade imbalances.
Yeah.
So
tariffs are completely
no one's answering my
irrelevant.
question. Are there any tariffs that Lesotho is implementing on the United States?
It doesn't matter because that's not how it was calculated.
But no, that's part of the negotiation. You could say, well, that chart's wrong, but then I'm asking you, okay, so what is the right number there?
The right number is if it. Yeah, it's not 97%. And the right situation to do.
Number? I didn't bring up
what minerals. It depends on what minerals you're trying to buy and what you want. Like, that's the thing is with trade imbalances is sometimes you need something. Like, we need to sit Donald Trump down and play Settlers of Catan. Have you ever played that game?
Love
because
that game.
there's sometimes you want a rock and you have to give up 2 sheep to get it. And you know what? It works mutually beneficial for you to get that one rock even though you gave over 2 sheep. And that's how trading actually works in the real world.
All right, I appreciate it. Thanks, Ben, for the call. We got to get to a break. All right, you're listening to the Jeff and Bill Show.
This is Denver's talk leader, News Talk 710 KNUS.
Wow, we got spicy today on the Jeff and Bill Show. It's why we love it. Thank you to everybody that called in and texted and joined the conversations. Of course, this will continue. Donald Trump tariffs, should he maintain them? Should he negotiate them down? And then tomorrow, Bill's out. So Conservative Mama will be joining me on the show. You've been listening to Jeff and Bill.
This is Denver's talk leader, News Talk 710 KNUS.